Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the school board meeting for this evening. I will be glad when we are able to meet back in person again, but there is a benefit to these type of meetings, and 149 participants is one benefit. I don't know if we've ever had that many people in the boardroom before. It'd be quite crowded in there if we had that this evening. So welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. We'll call the meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody take yourselves off mute and join me. Thank you, Mr. Landers. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, good. I just messed up. All right, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the July 13th, 2020 agenda.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right. All right. Do any board members have anything that they would like to report?
I was able to attend the MSBA virtual conference a couple weeks ago and participated in that, and so it was good. There was a lot of focus on virtual learning and COVID and what it looks like. So it was good to hear from everyone from doctors and school nurses and teachers of the year and everybody. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I also attended that, and Beth and I divided up the sessions so we weren't at the same things. But the one I went to about reentry, the board's responsibilities for reentry to school, remembering that this was June 19th. And when I was looking back at what they said, I feel real confident of what we're doing. And they said three things: continue to communicate, which I believe we are, support staff's efforts, even with a kind word. And I think that's important. And monitor our key priorities. Then I also attended the delegate assembly, and our new MSBA president is Linda Doherty from NICSA. Our president-elect is Nancy Masterson from Camdenton, and our new vice president is John Craig from Crawford City. That's all.
Good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Going on, so there's not as many things to participate in. I have attended the Reopen RQS meetings, and we'll hear more about that later. I have been attending the design consultation meetings for the Raytown South auditorium, and those are going very well. So we'll be looking forward to seeing those items soon. All right. Superintendent highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Good evening, everyone. Just one thing, I was able to participate as a panelist in a panel discussion last week to the Missouri Association of School Administrators. There were over 500 administrators in the state listening in from a group of panelists and what we're trying to do to help get our schools reopened and moving forward into the fall and beyond. And got a lot of good feedback and a lot of the work I cited a lot of the work that was being done by a lot of our staff. And I know there's been a lot of contacts. Dr. Hux is out there. He can tell you his phone's probably been ringing off the hook on some items that we've been looking at. And also gaining some insight from what other districts are doing as well around us. But just shows that everyone is working together to try and do what they can to keep teachers safe, to keep kids safe, and to try and get back to a normalcy if there is such a thing. So that's it, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Dr. Markley. We'll hear your report in a few minutes. Did you know Let's see, Danielle Nixon.
Hello.
Hey there.
Can
Hi,
you
Danielle.
hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. On Did You Know, we have Chef Mike Krastowski. He was selected as the Missouri Regional Teacher of the Year. So he's our Herndon culinary instructor. He's selected as the district teacher of the year through our interview process in March or April. It's been so long. He was selected and he completed his Regional Teacher of the Year application. And he was selected by the Kansas City Regional Professional Development Center. And so now he is going to go and participate in the Missouri Teacher of the Year process. And he was one of 6 teachers who were selected for the regional award. The school district announced its support staff employee of the year, and that's Charmin Rowland, who is an interventionist at Spring Valley Elementary. We were able to do a judging process in June and was selected by our judges. And she will have the pleasure of doing a speech when we do our welcome back videos and everything to welcome back teachers. And we'll share it on social media to welcome back staff and families throughout our welcome back week. We have a Raytown South High School student who earned first in state and qualified for national for FCC LA. They earned the silver medal in the Students Taking Action professional presentation event. And it was the first time a Raytown High, I believe it's in South High first, a Raytown High FCC LA member has participated, had the opportunity to participate in the National Star competition. Additionally, at the bottom, you can see students in our Smart Start program at Eastwood Hills Elementary. They were practicing sentence structures while using sunglasses, and they created art shaped like the sun and sunbeams. And that's it, you know.
All right. Thank you, Danielle. That's one thing I really miss about our in-person meetings is seeing those students come to our meetings in person who have had those great accomplishments, so we can recognize them and their parents, and then we get to ask them where they're going to school and all that stuff. So those are some great achievements, but I do miss seeing those in person. All right. We did have one person request to speak to the board on the reopen RQS issue that's coming up later in the meeting, and I believe that's Dennis Helsel. Is he still going to speak, Rachel? And
he is. He's promoted to panelist, but he is muted. Dennis, can you unmute?
And hopefully turn your video on.
Yeah, I'm here. I'll be able to speak if you can hear me.
We can hear you. Are you able to turn your video on by chance?
Yeah, let me take a look at that. Well, give me a moment. Okay. Yes.
Here we go. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. That I'll be speaking later. Is that correct? Or?
Oh, you're speaking right now.
Oh, all right then. Okay. Yeah. So I just wanted to. I'm here kind of representing NEA and a large group of teachers that reached out to us last week, and just wanted to provide us feedback. There were a lot of my teacher colleagues, myself, and just people all throughout the district, I think, that were concerned about, there was a story that went out, it was on the news, and teachers in particular were concerned about what kind of teaching are we going to look like next year. And so from what I received, it was like, well, what's the platform going to be? Are we going to teach in person? Are we going to teach online? Are we going to teach both at once? And so this survey went out, and I'm just going to cite the feedback that I got, and then I would be happy to provide any of the comments to the board if anybody would like to see that. I just have to kind of, if I can approve that with the NEA people, and we'd love to have you guys take a look at that. But I'll just read the statement here. The NEA Executive Council sent out a survey to members Friday afternoon. In the response to hearing the reopening update on the news, as of 5 o'clock this afternoon, we had responses from 115 members. 73% are not comfortable broadcasting their classroom live on Zoom. This discomfort is rooted in concerns for student privacy, the challenges of supervising two groups of students concurrently when those groups have very different needs, and concerns about the quality of instruction and planning that would be possible while managing this sort of setup. We also asked teachers to check boxes of which forms of instruction they feel comfortable with for August. Teachers were able to select multiple boxes they felt comfortable with, and this is what the data gave us. 48% of respondents are comfortable with in-person learning with modifications and safety adjustments. 29% are comfortable with hybrid model of learning, including the same teacher delivering both in-person and distance instruction. And 75% of respondents are comfortable with delivering distance learning. Many members cited specific medical concerns, either for their students themselves or members of their household, as reasons why they are uncertain about teaching in person in school. We collected this data from NEA members quickly in response to the update from the news, and we thought it would be useful to the board as you make decisions. Thank you for listening to the teachers and considering the safety of everyone involved. Sorry, I was caught a little off guard. So one thing, I've spoken at board meetings in the past, and my relationship has always been as a partner. And so anytime I offer input or anytime I offer insight from the perspective of teachers, it's always to formulate a plan that will be in the best interest of teachers and students. Unions are oftentimes looked at as only working for the rights of the group they represent. With regard to teachers unions, we represent students as well. And one of the things that we've heard a lot about is how do we keep ourselves, our families, our students, our community safe? And that's kind of the forefront of what we're really concerned about at the moment. This is by far the most important board meeting that I've ever been a part of, and I'd probably say in the history of Raytown. Like, we're going to make a decision about the school year that's going to impact the health of our entire community. And there are districts that are going to handle it appropriately and weigh all the concerns, and there are districts that are going to dive right in and maybe make a few mistakes. And I say that we need to be an example of one of the districts that weighs every concern and acts in the best interest of every invested party. I have 2 kids downstairs right now that are attending school in the fall. I want them to be in person. I want them to be safe. My daughter's going to be going to the early childhood center. First time in school. Very strange time to be going to school. My son's going to be a 5th grader. I'm going to be entering my 16th year of teaching, 13th in Raytown. I want us to make wise decisions about how we go about things. And I'll be honest with you, I'm scared but excited. I feel like this is a learning experience for us all. And one of the things, just reach out to us, teachers. We want to be involved in the decisions that are made. We want to keep our students safe. We want to keep our families safe. I'm doing summer school right now. It's been going great. We have small class sizes. We can manage things. We don't feel that anybody's safety is at risk in the particular building I'm at. That's not necessarily the case throughout. I've had people talk to me where they're deeply concerned about the setting that they're in. Like, I don't know that I can manage the safety of the kids that I'm with. If I had more kids, I would be super concerned. There's a lot of things taking place, and I know we have the reopen committee. I'm urging us to just be cautious in every decision we make. Choice is a big thing with education. Parents can make choices. Do they want their kids to be educated online? Do they want their kids to be educated in person? Let them make those choices. School reform is a big thing. We're in a period of forced reform. We have to reform. We have no choice but to do what the moment dictates for us. And I just want us to be wise in those decisions. And I've got a few other things. Let me see here. Okay, curriculum and safety. So there's this notion of the hidden curriculum, what we teach through how we go about teaching. It's not necessarily what we teach all the time, it's how we teach it. And I think care and concern is kind of how we want to lead. We want to lead that we're cared, we care for our patrons, we care for our community. And there's a deep safety concern here that I think that every family has to weigh for themselves. And teachers are, myself, I'm a young man. Well, I'm going to be turning 40 this year. But I feel more comfortable being in person. I can do that. There are teachers that have other concerns where they have to worry about their safety. And so all these issues are going to have to be weighed at once. And I know I'm going on long here, but as I was saying, this is definitely the most important meeting that the school board has had, in my opinion. So I say take it slow, do the reopen committee, find out what parents want to do, but don't make rash decisions. There's districts around us that are going to North Kansas City. There's a couple of schools in North Kansas City started school today. There'll be information about how things are taking place in there. Like we have through July. We don't start school till August. I say be patient. Let teachers be involved in decisions. Let parents, students, like pitch ideas. Like tell us, how do we want to do this? There's so many different options we could, a week on, a week off. Like how many different things could we consider? Just don't make the wrong choice and be on the side of safety. And I'll just, I'll kind of end it there, but I'm speaking tonight as a teacher. I'm speaking as a representative of a lot of teachers with a lot of different opinions. And I'm speaking as a parent. And that's kind of where my heart's at. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. You're also speaking as a community member, which I appreciate a lot. And as a former teacher of the year, you do have some special authority to speak for the other teachers. So I appreciate that. I think you already know that we're not going to make a rash decision.
Sure.
The Reopen RQS committee has been meeting for several months. Even though other districts have put out their reports, I think we've been far ahead on this issue. And you say we need to make the right decision. You know that none of us know exactly what the right decision is going to be in all this. We're going to try to make the very best decision we can. And we're going to hear that report later on in the meeting. And we have been involving the teachers and the community throughout this whole process. So we do appreciate you coming and speaking to us. And we do very much appreciate your opinion. You're a good spokesman for the teachers.
Yeah,
so we love our teachers, and we know they want to be with their kids.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing I want to say, like you guys have always welcomed feedback and input. So I certainly didn't want to say, I trust you and I have confidence in the guidance that you've taken and that you're going about things the right way.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We don't normally have questions and answers, during the public comment period, but I just want to take a couple minutes to see if any board members have any questions for Dennis right now. All right, good. Well, we'll hear the full report in just a little bit. And so thank you, Dennis. We'll move on to the report of superintendent.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore. In 9.12, those are the end-of-year reports by elementary principals and secondary principals. Are there any questions on the board on those? I would say the same in 9.3, 9.4. Again, reports. Okay, and 9.5, Dr. Shelton and Dr. Huff are out there. Anything further you want to add on the grant writer update?
No, I think the report's very clear. Obviously, as we've talked about in the past, they've done the grant writers, it's a team of writers, have done a great job. And we have some grant applications and proposals out there, and hopefully we'll be bringing you some very good news in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. 9.6, the summer school update. We're going to have Dr. Mixon give that update, but before she begins, she's going to go into some numbers, and I want everybody to listen real close to what those are, because we thought that the summer school session would be a good test for us to see how many kids are going to show up, et cetera. And I think as you start hearing those numbers, you can probably make some inferences about that may also lead to the numbers that we might have this fall moving forward, particularly on physical attendance. So Dr. Mixon, would you mic in there?
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. We did start summer school last Monday, and we started at our expected capacity was, at least for elementary students, was at about 860 students. We had about 75% of those come the first day, stayed consistent, and since then we've dropped down about an extra 10%. So from the 860 we intended to come to summer school last week, we had about 645. and that is just the 5 elementary buildings. We also have new trails in Northwood open this summer, and their capacity is they're running at about similar, about 75% of what we expected to be there. I can tell you at the middle school and high school level, we have about 1,000 students or so that are involved with launch classes or fuel ed classes for credit recovery. So those classes have started as well. The best thing, we were all at buildings last week as kids came in, and it was so refreshing to see students, and they were so excited to see their teachers, and the teachers were so excited to see kids. And it has been, really adjusting to a new normal, adjusting to students wearing masks when they are on the bus and close to each other. And it has been honestly amazing to me to see how well kids have adapted to this. We have kids, they're all wearing masks that they brought from home most of the time. They're all lined up with their masks on. They're working on keeping that social distancing when we're in the halls and when we're in close proximity. But they're kiddos, and so we're constantly working on teaching and reteaching procedures and practices, and just the resolve of the kids to adapt to this has been pretty amazing. So we're excited moving forward. There's lots of good learning going on, so we're just glad to be back at it and have kids in seats and to be able to work with them this summer.
Any questions for Dr. Mixon? Dr. Hucks, I know you're out there as well. Do you want to mention on some of the procedural pieces we have on cleaning the buses and classrooms after daily use and also after route use with transportation?
Man, I'd rather you not steal my thunder for the report in the later part, but I will go over it then. And yes, we are doing some increased cleaning in buildings and buses due to the nature of the environment we're in, significantly so. So I'll leave it there for now and then add more when we get into the reopen information.
Dr. Markley, you're muted.
I apologize. 9.7, Dr. Huff on virtual instruction plan.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm going to walk through a few documents here with you and hit some highlights, and please stop and ask questions along the way. There's quite a bit of material here, not nearly like Dr. Hux is going to go through later. We have quite a few plans in play for when we get started coming up here in August. The first one document I'm going to look at here is called the Virtual Learning Plan. And these are all attached to your, right there. There you go. Rachel's opening up for us. Very nice. The Virtual Learning Plan is the same document as we gave last month to you, but updated with some newer numbers and newer thoughts from last month. This document starts off with the assumptions and assertions that we are working with as a C&I department. Pardon me. The first one being that we do believe that more families are going to seek purely virtual. We anticipate 5 to 10%. The surveys are showing about 15%. And who knows what is going to end up happening at the end of the day. And that number could be wildly off. We'll wait and see what parents actually decide on. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. We do believe that some families will seek this virtual instruction with outside vendors, and obviously we want to show them that Raytown has a very good option for them. Assumption 3 being that we are very likely going to be under more restrictions with COVID when August starts up, and we need to be responsive to that. And then our assertion is that we need to be producing a guaranteed and viable curriculum, no matter what form that looks like. And that means that we need to guarantee that 100% of our kids have 100% access to 100% of their curriculum, and that curriculum is designed in such a way that it can actually be viably delivered by the teachers to the kids. So considering those, we are looking at a few different things here. One is a blended learning model. Very likely, we are going to be starting off the year with somewhat less than 100% of the kids there 100% of the time. We will very likely have a maybe a 50% capacity or a 20% capacity mandated from the city or the county. And that's going to require that we are responsive to that in the teaching environment. And we do have some classes that are already designed at a very low capacity. Northwood, our self-contained SPED classrooms, our functional skills classrooms, those classes are already at very low capacity. Very few kids in the classrooms. We will very likely have all of the students there every day for Northwood, New Trails, our self-contained SPED classrooms in the regular education, in the regular ed buildings. They'll be there every day. Our vision for the rest of the folks, you might have half your kids in the classroom at one time and half the students at home each day. And we're going to provide some equipment for the teachers to be able to provide instruction for the students that are inside the classroom and at home all at once, including a web camera, speakers, monitors, microphones, that sort of thing. But just like the regular teaching environment, the teacher's going to have control over that. And when the teacher wants to have those students online, the teacher can turn those students online and let them know that they can join in on the whole group instruction. Maybe the teacher instead wants to provide a video for the students so they can do that when they're at the home. Or maybe they just provide the whole group instruction on the day that the students are actually in the class, and then they're working on something that's more independent when they're at home. Our goal as CNI is to provide all the tools necessary for teachers to be able to do what they wish to do. And so that's what we've envisioned in the blended learning environment, is providing them with those tools so that all students can participate at all times. We already have Google Classroom, tools like Edulastic that we're purchasing that will provide them the opportunity of accessing the curriculum no matter where they're at, whether at home or whether they're in the classroom. And we're also purchasing devices for students all the way down to kindergarten. So we'll be one-to-one with all those students, and they'll have a device at home available to them. We also are going to have the option of virtual learning. And the virtual learning would be with a teacher that's teaching purely virtual. The students are at home all the time. And this is going to be dependent on the number of families that we have that choose to do virtual learning. And this plan will look different if we have 5% that choose it versus 20% versus 30% that choose to do the purely virtual model. But we'll be providing a blended access from classes that we're doing as virtual classes, or maybe we're providing it through a platform like Fuel Ed or Launch, or maybe a combination of the two. As a, for instance, we may have students in high school that want to take calculus or physics or chemistry or something online, and we actually need to have somebody, an outside vendor, do that. Whereas more of the basic classes we're going to be teaching using our own staff, teaching that virtual curriculum. And throughout this summer, our curriculum writers have been writing into the curriculum these resources to be able to help make these classes virtual. So a teacher should be able to teach a mirrored curriculum for the virtual class as we would have in the regular class. And then the last part of this is marketing. And we know that we need to be able to show our parents, here's what we have and here's what it looks like. And we are working on providing those sorts of tools to be able to show parents what it is that they'd be able to access. So, and then at the bottom of the marketing, just, these are some of the things we're going to provide. The Wi-Fi hotspots were necessary, letting them know they can participate in extracurricular activities. And we have a lot to offer to keep students within our walls or within our virtual setting, instead of seeking outside sources. So the next document I want to look at is a letter, which I should stop there. Any questions on the first document that I showed you?
Hey, Brian.
Yes,
so will we have separate teachers teaching virtual than are teaching in the classroom, or will classroom teachers be expected to do both?
So it could be a combination of the two. In elementary, it's really got to be one or the other. So if we have, let's say in third grade, we've got about 30 third grade teachers across the district. Let's say we have 10% of our students that decide to go virtual. That's about 60 kids. It's going to take anywhere from 2 to 3 virtual teachers. And so we would use 2 to 3 of the third grade teachers to teach purely virtual to those third grade students. The higher the number of parents that choose, the easier it is. So as for instance, if we have 30% of our parents that decide to go virtual, and let's say at a particular school, we have 3 teachers teaching it. Well, if a third of those kids decide to go virtual, then one of those teachers becomes a virtual teacher, okay? In secondary, it's a little bit different because in secondary, we'll probably just reduce sections. So for instance, if we have, let's say, just for sake of easy numbers, let's say we have 10 algebra sections at a high school. And if 10% of our students decide to go virtually, we'll only need 9 sections. And so one teacher would take one of those 9 sections and teach it virtually. And they would essentially teach the exact thing they're teaching to the regular students. They would teach the virtual students. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so the next document I want to introduce is the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quick question, just real quick related to that. Would that teaching be expected to be synchronous or asynchronous?
Could be either. And really, that depends, and I'd say it'd actually be both. Because there are times that a teacher is going to record themselves and the teacher and the student can get online and see it sometimes. But like I'd mentioned in the blended, perhaps that teacher wants to have the students that are at home engage with the classroom the very moment they're working with the classroom. And the kids at home could, speak and participate live with that teacher in class. But again, that's teacher choice.
And I think the teachers do need to have choice, but I think the synchronous is going to be better. It's always better. That way the kids have the more accountability and structure.
Well, we'll have the opportunity for both.
All right, thank you.
All right, so the next document is that document labeled the letter, the learning information letter, fall 2020. Oh, you've already got it up there. Good job, Rachel. She reads my mind. All right, so this letter is going out to families, with the board's blessing tomorrow. And what we're going to ask is families to choose for their student to either be in person or learn virtually. And this letter is letting folks know that we're going to be asking them this question during enrollment, starting in July 27th. And on enrollment, there's going to be a screen that's going to require a response for every student, that their student is going to be virtual or their student is going to be in person. If the parent chooses for that student to be virtual, we gave some options here as to what that might look like. That student might be taught through Fuel Ed virtually. They might be taught through Launch virtually. They might be taught with our teacher virtually. And there are numerous different reasons that would play into that. It's not parent choice. It's really a discussion about what's going to be the best option for that student. We're going to try as much as possible to provide those classes with our teacher teaching that student virtually. We feel that it's best to have that relationship with a teacher that's locally. So we're going to make every effort to make that happen, but we also know that it's not going to happen 100% of the time. We are going to need to use Fuel Ed. We're going to need to use Launch as well. But when that parent makes that choice, that student then stays with that choice for the entire semester if they choose to go virtually. So we want them to make that commitment and stick with it through the end of the semester. If they choose in person, obviously we're letting them know that in person may not look like what in-person school has looked like in the past. They may only be going a couple days a week. They may not, it's just really dependent on local rules and regulations. But if they choose in person and then want to choose to go virtually, they can do that anytime. But they can't make that move from virtual back to in person until the end of the semester. And we're going to ask them to make this choice during enrollment. So any questions on the letter? Okay, so the next document is the virtual courses document. which is very similar to the one that you saw last month, but we are continuing to, yeah, that's it. We're continuing to modify it as, we dive into this and see what's really possible with certain courses. So the middle school courses you see there, these are the courses we plan to offer virtually. Our goal is to offer these courses with our instructors virtually. And then the following page is a list of courses that we plan to offer at the high school level virtually. And the struggle has been really about what we can offer realistically virtually. And so we have taken some courses off. For instance, we had, sewing on there. We decided it's really difficult to manufacture garments when the student doesn't have the necessary equipment. And the same thing with our foods courses we took off because it's just very difficult to do that. And so we feel pretty decent about the rest of these that are on there. It's going to be more difficult in some cases, but it offers a good slate of choices for our students. And we obviously have more choices when we throw in the fuel ed and the launch options as well. And this doesn't include the elementary options because the elementary is pretty basic. They're going to get the same courses they would get if they were an elementary kid. We are looking at also including things like library and specials as well, and as well as counselor. The counselor does push in courses with the kids, and we'd like to offer those same sort of lessons also with the kids that are virtual. Any questions on the courses? All right, the last document is the Virtual Professional Learning Conference. This is during New Teacher Week, or actually, New Teacher Week starts on, I think, a Wednesday. This is a Monday through a Friday. But we recognize the need for professional development, and we're throwing a lot of new resources at teachers. We believe a few things. We believe here. One, we believe we need to offer professional development. We also believe that there is a limit to how much professional development one can cram in somebody else's head in a short period of time. We all have a limit, and we do not feel like we're going to be able to provide professional development in everything we have right off the bat. We know that we're not going to be great at some things to start with, and we'll offer professional development well into the semester on new things that we have coming on. We're going to try and prioritize that to offer the professional development for those big tools that are really necessary early on. But we also feel that it's important that if we have some folks that want to run faster, we're going to offer the opportunity to learn more about these things in this professional learning conference. So as an example, you'll see on Tuesday at 9:30, there's a session on Nearpod. Nearpod is a new tool that we have offered for teachers. We aren't planning on doing a Nearpod professional development across the board at the very beginning of the year. We'll do more later, but we do want to offer the opportunity for people to get to know Nearpod better if they'd like to. So professional development will be a big part of our reopening plan as well. Any questions for me?
Steve, Brian, I had a question about enrollment.
Okay.
Or did you want to just talk about this, right? This professional learning. Is that what you mean?
No. Whatever
Okay.
you want to throw out.
All right. Enrollment begins July 27th.
Yes,
How
ma'am.
many, or what percentage of students do you expect to have enrolled in the first few days or the first week or so?
We anticipate that it'll probably be as it has in the past, and you get a good chunk early, but they continue to enroll all the way up until they actually go to school. And
Right.
so we're going to probably give it a couple of weeks before we make big decisions as to where we're going to place people. Because as you know, we even at times have to move staff around after school has started because
Right.
you just aren't really sure about who's going to show up until they show up.
Right.
So some districts have put this out, this decision making already, like in June. we believe that we're going to get a better number being closer to the start of school, but we know the number is not going to be perfect until we actually start school. And so we'll do the very best we can with the information we got.
Right. So I'm thinking that I'm just thinking of parents, they need to make a plan. They need to be prepared if they're going to, what are we calling it? In-person school.
Yeah.
If they're going in person, they won't necessarily know right away if everybody's going or a percentage of students are going. So they need to have a plan for if not everyone is going every day.
Indeed.
Right?
And we won't know really where we're at until we're closer to the time, because we depend on Jackson County and Kansas City.
Right.
Their regulations for group size. And that can change in a moment.
Depending on what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But just so they know that it's a possibility, I think your letter states that, right?
It does.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So,
And that's going out in the U.S. mail, right?
I believe we're going to send that out electronically tomorrow, but Danielle is in charge of that portion. And so she can tell you exactly how she's going to send it out tomorrow.
So it goes electronically. That's good.
Okay. I believe so. But Danielle's unmuting. She can tell us.
Yes, it'll go out electronically with a phone call updates, but communication is the next item on the agenda. We'll have a hub where we'll also post all of the letters and correspondence for families who may or may not receive it for whatever reason by email.
Okay.
Hey,
Dr. Huff?
Dr. Shelton, Dr. Huff, before you go on, I just want to say something quickly to everyone who is online and watching with us. A lot of people are typing questions into the chat, and that's fine. I just want you to know that the board won't be answering those questions tonight. We just won't be doing that, but hopefully a lot of these questions will be answered throughout the course of the rest of the meeting and the reports, the committee reports. But the question, you can still feel free to ask the questions because they'll be recorded and they can be looked at later. And hopefully we can get answers to those questions if they're not all answered this evening. So I just wanted you to know that the questions won't necessarily be specifically answered by board members tonight, but you can still feel free to ask them. They're not being ignored.
We'll also use those questions, Mr. Moore, to start building our FAQ. Moving forward for part of the communication process. So we will capture those and include that.
All right, good. Thank you. So were you done, Dr. Huff?
I am done if there are any questions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Huff?
I had a question, or I have a question. Dr. Huff, I'm curious whether you are anticipated the need for an after-hours hotline for training purposes for the 5-minute phone call if somebody needs because they're curious about something didn't work and they want to get it removed before they have dinner. Do you have that? Can you bring that kind of training to the teachers?
So you're talking about the teachers and the needs that they have?
The teacher resource hotline that they can call just for easy questions or tough questions. They have a resource. They don't have to sit around and stew about it. They can learn on a real-time basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about the hotline, but our typical process for teaching about these things is to work through established groups so that teachers do have that go-to person. And it depends on the resource. Sometimes that would be a district coordinator. Sometimes that would be one of their teacher leaders. Sometimes that would be their department chair within the building. Sometimes it's their principal. But yes, we do have those established. But it is, again, it depends on what the resource is and who they would go to for that particular resource. And sometimes it's the technology helpline.
I mean, it's also important to help them feel confident to call a lot of the you just discussed. So,
Yes.
you know, we've got to get real-time information to them to be successful.
We agree. And actually, the way my philosophy about technology is if you use it twice and it doesn't work either time, that's probably the last time you're going to touch it. And so we want it to work well at the beginning so that they have confidence in it.
Mr. Landers, did you have a question?
Did. One of the questions that came up on the chat was dealing with dual credit, and it was, would they have to enroll in person or can they do dual credit online? But then I think you said that all these questions are stored, so they will be answered at some time. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hopefully throughout the rest of this meeting, or as Dr. Markley said, they'll start developing FAQs.
Yeah.
We'll try to answer them all
That's
right now.
what I was just gonna. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Huff? Okay, thank you, Dr. Huff. Ms. Nixon, I believe you're up.
Yeah. So Dr. Huff has talked about virtual learning, and we're going to talk about the reopening plan later on in this meeting. One of the main things that I just want to highlight in this section is that both the letter that Dr. Huff referenced, the reopening plan information, we're going to use that portal that we created in March for coronavirus updates. After today's meeting, tomorrow around sometime, it'll be changed from coronavirus updates to fall reopening information. And we will continue to populate that as kind of the main hub of information for reopening plans, back to school information, highlighting community organizations that are still doing summer feeding, internet resources, just anything and everything. The FAQ that we will build, it's going to be there so that we have a centralized location for information. But additionally, we are going to direct and share information through every communication channel that we have an option to use as we see fit. We have social media, we have email, we have phone calls, we have push notifications that we can do through our mobile app. And depending on the need, we sometimes do direct calling if there's information that needs to be done. And so if an email goes out to parents, a phone call will also be received. If you are downloaded the mobile app, you would receive a push notification, and it would all be saying to either check your email, or if you don't have it in your email, to check the information hub. Our next steps in regards to the reopening plan is that we will have it posted along with the letter tomorrow, and then later on this week, families and staff will see notifications about providing feedback. Here's a form for you to provide feedback, or another survey for you to provide feedback to that, so that we can make amendments to the plan and again, create that FAQ. That's really the main highlight, the change and that information hub, because I think that knowing where to go for the information makes people feel empowered and helps with some of the confusion. And so if there's any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Nixon? All right, anything else, Dr. Markley? I think one more item. You're on mute still.
There you go. Can you hear me? Okay. 9.9, the 2020-2021 school year start and end time. Some of the things we discussed in the past, but we've changed the times a little bit. So as we move through the school year, the high schools and middle schools and elementaries, the amount of time that they have attended will reflect the same, along with our preschool, and that's what that item is. And I'd answer any questions that you might have.
Dr. Markley?
Yes, sir.
Just real quick, I know we got way more important matters. in regards to a little bit, but the 9.3, I think we need to consider the suspensions and in-school and out-of-school suspensions prior to us being sent home and closing school. I think we had like 20 more of them. And the problem that we were talking about before still persists. But I would like to say that because, of course, there's no suspensions from March through the end of school, that's something I think we could keep in mind when we talk about going back to normal. Because I was trying to think of ways, I was trying to research ways into how we can even get rid of suspensions. And we seem to have done that. In regards to reopening plan we have going on right now, when it comes to discipline, I imagine kids will be moved to virtual learning instead of coming to school. Or at least how will we function when it comes to in-school suspensions, or will those things all operate the same inside the building? But I'm sure Dr. Hux would probably address that stuff too. But I just think we need to keep our minds open in regards to suspensions, because this has presented a unique opportunity for us to consider some other ways of disciplining our students.
I agree, Mr. Burton. We will probably have some options more so than we've had in the past. And as we start to encounter them, I don't think we'll be able to do things like we did in the past, and we'll have the space to do so, and we'll have to address those as we move forward. But the virtual instruction piece will give us some options more so. I agree.
That's all I have.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Markley. Any other questions for Dr. Markley? All right. Finance Committee meeting minutes. Dr. Sheldon, do you have anything you need to mention about these?
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Not necessarily. We met on June 15th, which seems like a long time ago in the world of finance. A lot's changed at the state and local level. I'll just say this: we are in a strong financial position, and we are poised to weather this financial storm that's ahead of us as it currently sits. So, but I will continue to update the board as information becomes available to us.
All right. Did we need to approve these?
Yes, please. They're listed as information only.
Yes.
Yes. Rachel, would you mind if we change this to an action item?
I can. Do they normally go back to the committee first and then you bring them?
Oh, that's right. This is the first time you've seen this. So no, this is an information item to go back to the Finance Committee for approval, then back to you.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you for clarification.
All right. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the July 13th, 2020 consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right. Consent agenda passes. The next item on here is board goals. We will be scheduling some special work sessions to deal with these, along with the last closed session that we had discussing some what we want to see coming up this year as far as just our board goals and how we want to see those to be addressed. Anybody have any questions, or Dr. Markley, did you want to say anything about these? All right. So we will start working on that very soon, and hopefully we can have some of these meetings in person. All right. Next item. Resolution for direct deposit. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the resolution authorizing amendment to direct deposit agreements for the Series 2019A and Series 2019B bonds, which will take effect prior to the October state aid payment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah. So Dr. Sheldon, I don't recall a motion like this before. Is this, we don't do this every year, or just these special bonds for right now?
Actually, you're right, Mr. Moore. This is not something we do every year. We have an opportunity to move. Well, we have 10 payments a year for our debt service, and we have 2 months that we have, I'll say, a debt service payment holiday. Our lowest cash flow months are the month of October and the month of November. And so what we're doing through this resolution is moving those debt service holidays, payments holidays, to the month of October and the month of November, which gives us a better cash flow for our finances.
All right, any other questions? All right, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, secondary school furniture. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move that the board approve SSI Furnishing for the purchase of triangle tables and chairs for secondary buildings in the amount of $55,511.55 under the Omni contract number R142202.
Is there a second? Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any questions or comments about that item? Budgeted furniture purchase. All right, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The motion passes. Okay, another motion for furnishings purchase. Is there a motion to approve?
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move the board approve SSI Furnishings for the purchase of new sign staples for all 3 middle schools in an amount of $30,455 under the PEPPM contract.
Second.
Any questions or comments about that item? All right, all in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All opposed say no. All right. All right, purchase of cafeteria tables.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve SSI Furnishings for the purchase of cafeteria tables under the AEPA contract number IFDO18D furniture.
Second.
Any questions? So Travis, why are we just doing these 2 schools? They just have a different type here than everybody else has?
These 2 schools have the type of cafeteria tables that are in the walls. And I don't know if you remember a young man from Poplar Bluff, a child was killed when a table fell out of the wall. And after that, our insurance company suggested to all schools that have these types of tables to replace them. So that's what we're doing.
So these are the last two schools, right?
Correct.
It said, yeah, the only two that still have the tables that fold. Okay.
All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Concrete repairs. Entertain a motion.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I move the board approve Bishop Concrete, a prime contractor, to do district-wide repairs not to exceed $50,000.
Second.
Any questions or comments? So previously, we approved a per unit price on these, like this concrete and the asphalt coming up next. Is this addressing specific repair items now?
So yes, annually, even though we're doing bond project work, which does include things like sidewalks and parking lots, we only do approximately half of the buildings each year. Of course, the other half of the buildings do experience damage from winter weather, potholes, settling of sidewalks, and so on. So we do keep an annual budget of repairs for concrete and asphalt, and it'll be awarded for work in those locations. And it's not to exceed because, you know, potholes develop each day. And so we go and review those. Facilities director, you know, outlines the ones that need to be done and works with the contractor to do that. This is a prime vendor that you have previously approved to do this at the unit pricing you mentioned earlier, Mr. Moore.
All right.
Mr. President, I'm just curious. I know it's not to exceed $50,000. So how did we come at this number? I mean, how many repairs are equaling to up to this number?
So this is the annual amount we have allocated in the budget to this. So that'll give Mr. Hustad the authority to spend up to that amount. It's usually less than that, but you know, some winters are worse than others. So that we can't tell you exactly the cost because again, it's we go through the district right before. Well, we've already been doing it, but we keep going all the way up until the moment they start. To make sure we get all the most recent damage corrected.
Oh, thank you.
Were there any other questions? All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, motion passes. Or motion to approve asphalt repairs.
Mr. President, I move the board approve advanced asphalt, a prime vendor to conduct asphalt repairs district-wide not to exceed $150,000.
Second.
Any questions on this item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes. Marketing resource quote, entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the bid for marketing resources submitted by Gage in the amount of $17,132.50.
Second.
So I have a question.
Yes.
Can we get a little background on this? I mean,
Looks like Dr. Mixon, does Dr. Mixon want to speak to this, or this just looks like a text?
Dr. Huff.
Text
it's,
update.
yeah, it's a textbook. It's just a typical adoption. Our marketing class they're up for the adoption for their resources, and this is a essentially a textbook, but it also has an online learning portal for students to use.
Okay.
Did you have something specific you're wondering about it?
No, just was curious.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. Motion carries. All right. Time for the draft reopening plan. Before we have discussion on it, we'll just entertain a motion to approve the plan.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the reopening plan as presented.
Second.
All right. I guess we'll turn this over to Dr. Hux, unless Dr. Markley wants to say some opening words.
I will just say that over the last few weeks, the reopening committee's been working pretty hard at collecting data, looking at research, and being informed on the topic, and really trying to find a place where we feel comfortable about moving forward with our community and our kids and our families. Dr. Hux is to be commended on the work that he's doing. He is our liaison. He is our COVID response person and will be so moving forward. And I know he's going to be bringing great information. And even though you've made a motion and you've got a second here, that doesn't mean that we can't amend this thing as we move forward. That's what tonight is for, to take a hard look at it and listen to what the board has ideas on the plan itself, and also anything else we might come across as we're discussing this. But also as we get this out to our community, it could also be adjusted somewhat as well as we're getting feedback. That's one of the main reasons we wanted to get this thing out and put it back, get it out there and get some feedback from our community and our parents. And ultimately, we need to know what kids want to come back to school and what ones don't, as far as the staffing point goes. So again, thank you to all those committee members. Some are here in the attendees tonight. Thank you for taking time out and serving at that. And they had a lot of great discussion as we're moving forward. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Hux.
Well, I'd like to also just say thanks on behalf of the board to everyone who served on that committee, continues to serve, because it's ongoing. And as I mentioned to the committee when we first started meeting, that our district is a leader in the region on safety issues. People come to Dr. Hux and to our district all the time when there's safety issues, because we're a leader in that. And this is a safety issue right here. So it made sense that Dr. Hux would lead that initiative. And we have a lot of good people serving on that. And so we will be a leader in this area also. So Dr. Hux, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is probably the most populated board meeting I've ever attended. I concur with the comments that Dennis Helsel mentioned earlier, and how important this is, and how safety is, the greatest facet or the greatest tenet to our plan. I 100% agree with that. We have nearly 40 members on our reopen committee. We've been meeting weekly, and surveying staff and parents, trying to do as much involvement as possible. A lot of difficulty in moving forward, in that in many ways we're reinventing school from start to finish. That is a lot to try to do in a short period of time. It makes it even harder when it's done in the summer, when you have limited ability to interact with staff, along with our social distancing guidelines that limit that. So I've also been working with many other school districts. We've been interacting and sharing information back and forth. And we all would agree that the process is messy. At the same time, I've been in Raytown 15 years, and what I do know about the administration and the board and the rest of the staff in the district is, at the end of the day, we will do the right thing for the students and staff. We will. And the hard and scary part about this plan is some people might fear that this is the plan that's in concrete and this is what will happen. And that's just not the case. If you notice just below the R on the document I have before you, it says draft. And it's not often that we come to the board with a document that says draft, but this will stay in draft form. because there's going to be so many changes that occur from today all the way till August 26th. We have changes nearly every day. We'll do something and someone else comes out with something else. And so this committee will stay alive and will continue to meet. Give you an example. I've been today working with a summer school teacher to help me in the survey subcommittee to survey summer school staff about their experiences. So as Dr. Markley mentioned earlier, one of the benefits of having summer school is that it is a place to pilot some of our initiatives. So we'll be doing that. Also, as Dr. Markley mentioned, we plan to put this information out to our stakeholders. That's not only parents, but that's staff members as well, and then solicit feedback. Because again, this isn't a simple task, like adopting a textbook or, some new curriculum, which that in itself is huge, but this is well beyond that scope. So it's going to require continuous agility and continuous change, so that, again, at the end of the day, we do the right thing. Give you an example. With cases on the rise, that may change things for our health department, which will change things for us. If we have a 50% capacity limitation, as Dr. Huff mentioned, all those things will come into play. So, sorry for the long introduction, but this first document, we'll be brief on this document. We'll spend the majority of our time on the guide. But this document is the overall master plan. Again, it's in draft form, and it's a synthesis of documents from various organizations. And when I say various organizations, I'm talking about the WHO, NASN, CDC, MSBA, CES, Music, every acronym you can think of that has an opinion on what we should do with schools. We've synthesized that information into this document. We've also worked with other districts, borrowing each other's information too. So what our goal here is to create a master plan, and this is really the plan to plan. So this document was created to help guide us in the creation of the next document. So this document here will have things in it like obviously background, which we're all pretty aware of what COVID is these days. And then assumptions. You heard Dr. Huff earlier mention various assumptions when it came to virtual instruction. With regard to COVID, we have a multitude of assumptions here. Here's an example of one. Virus that causes COVID-19 will remain in circulation until a vaccine is developed and widely used. And so that's what we're talking about when we talk about assumptions, and there are a multitude of those, as I mentioned earlier. Then we talk about phases. We basically have 3 phases, and they have to do with COVID's not an issue, COVID's somewhat of an issue, and COVID is a pervasive issue. And that might correspond in your mind that COVID's not an issue, it's okay to have 100% attendance. COVID's a moderate to severe issue, we might have to have a blended approach, and if COVID's pervasive, we would have to consider virtual learning, for example, like we did this past spring. And then we talk about things like governance, and then we get into, as you see numbers here, the plan. So the very first thing we see here in our plan is survey stakeholders, which we have done and will continue to do, because we're gonna take the opportunity to plan all the way up to day one. And even once day one gets here, and I'm sure we'll put some things into place that'll be difficult or maybe not successful, and we'll have to evaluate and change things once again. So that's what this document focuses on. So this document was presented to the reopening committee. We went through the facets and over time turned things like considerations into decisions. So for example, considering the use of masks, what's the decision? So we'll get to that in this next document. All right. So I'm going to switch over to that document.
Can I ask a question, Dr. Huck?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
The issue of testing, there's not a section in this preamble document that discusses testing, and there is a school of thought that says that pooling testing could be a methodology, a cost-effective methodology to determine the amount of infection that exists in a school. Why are we not concerned about testing? Is that something we don't intend to do, or should we be learning about it and staying current?
So yes to all of the things you said. It's not in this document at this time because we are not currently planning on doing it, but we are working with the Jackson County Health Department. We've received correspondence about it, and pardon me, that the Health Services Department within our district is interacting and looking at that. You know, there's obviously a lot of facets to what testing would look like. You know, what groups, students, staff, both. How would you test 1,500 kids in a high school when they arrive, for example? So all those pieces have to be discussed thoroughly, but we don't have an answer to say we can do it at this time. And then we've been, again, working with other districts around the metro area and kind of staying on par with what's going on in those other districts, which are not currently doing it at this time. They're taking the same view we are right now, that we're looking into it. We will follow the recommendations of the health department when it comes to that.
And I'll follow up with a question to Dr. Markley. You mentioned research. Who is the point person in your organization that is maintains current thought, current thinking on trends in the virus, trends in testing, trends in regulation, because that information is coming out so quickly that if you fall behind a week, that could change your thinking in some of the directions you. Who is that person that you rely on, or do you rely on a singular person?
Well, primarily.
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
That primarily that will be Dr. Huck. He will be our point person on staying current on all the research, along with help from our Health Services Department and the partners that we're trying to establish outside of the district, including Children's Mercy being one, and also Jackson County Health Department being another. But as far as the district point person, he would be that person with all other partners coexisting.
Dr. Huff or Dr. Hucks?
Dr. Hucks. Dr. Hucks.
So Dr. Hucks would be the point person on testing. I mean, if there's an avenue exposure, Dr. Hucks would know the answer to pooling versus other forms of testing. Should be expected that. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to move over to the quick reference guide. And the one I'm going to show you is the boring, just typed version. The one that will go out to parents will have lots of visual effort to it. But for us tonight, to be able to just go from one topic to another, this simple text will work best. And again, you know, like with any document, there's an introduction there that talks about COVID and the difficulties. We have a table of contents, which not a big deal for us right now. But where I want to start here is under what we call guidelines, COVID safety. And there are 20 of these, and you can think of these in a couple of ways. They are anchored by CDC recommendations, and you can also think of them as layers of safety. And then as we go through them, other government entities do have a say in how those look for us. So number one, you know, social distancing. We are going to make every effort to social distance where possible: classrooms, hallways, large gatherings, areas, bathrooms, etc. Now, everyone knows, especially as we're talking about summer school here, I think we saw a comment or heard from, might have been Dennis, talking about, 10 kids in a classroom, and more than that, it becomes difficult and things like that. So, and that is accurate. So, social distancing does have its limits, but we will do it where we can. And here's the thing. This is 22 or 27 pages. I'm just going to go through it. Just jump in and stop me if you have a question, because just getting through this first section on guidelines, there's 20 points here. So,
Travis?
Yes, go ahead.
On the social distancing, I've been talking with quite a few people, and I've said, for my family personally, if we were still in elementary school and I was in the job position I was at that time, I would likely have my kids stay home. And I've come to that because I feel like the more we can social distance, the better. And if I'm able to work it for my family to have them home, then it opens up, I don't want to say another spot, but it helps families who aren't able to do that. And so that's just been something that's been heavy on my mind the last few days and wanted to say.
And you bring up a great point, Beth. When we surveyed parents, there's a heavy, the opinions are starkly different. They are on and significant on each end of the curve. There are people that are like, open now. And then you have the others that are, shame on you for even thinking of opening. So unfortunately, there's not going to be an answer here that makes everyone happy. With this facet here, like social distancing, I note that we'll do it where possible. Social distancing is not our only plan. So there are other aspects to it that are in place so that when social distancing is difficult, it will help compensate for that. So, but I agree with you, and we'll be talking about that very topic about those who can, allowing for those with a higher need for transportation. So that's a great point you bring, Beth. The other thing too, until we put out this option to our families and know how many do plan to attend and how many plan to go virtually and some other facets like that, we won't know exactly what we can do with classroom desks, for example. So some of these are very fluid, and that's the thing, that's the hard thing for people right now is I want a concrete answer. And right now we're trying to just, clear the water, get the dirt out of the water to be able to see. And we can't give that clear answer right now. Some of these other things have to come into place before we'll know more. And then again, changes will take place based on other influence by other government entities. So it's a moving target.
Travis, and I think that moving target, I'd like to just push on that a little bit. I mean, the notion that the district will ensure that we're social. What was that? You moved that down, and I was reading.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that first line. The concern that where possible, who's going to decide that? Except what exceptions were we willing to tolerate? For example, who's going to decide that? Is that going to be a teacher? Is that going to be a student?
That'll be building administration. Every building looks different. So, for example, in South High, I was talking with Dr. O. I think he has 6 sets of bathrooms. So what it'll look like at bathrooms at his building would look different at Ray High. Also, Ray High has a higher number of attendance of students. So that will have to be done at the building level based on the guidelines in our master plan.
Travis?
Yes.
Will teachers have the same choice as parents? The same leeway that they have as far as their concerns about being in the building, I'm ready to be there, or I'm not comfortable with it. Will that be something those two things have to marry together, I guess?
So there is some differences between employees and patrons. Employees do not have the same luxury as patrons to choose whether or not they will come back to school or not to that degree. So the short answer is no, that they do not have the same level of decision making that a parent / student would make. Marlene, if you're on, you might speak to that. That is an HR department aspect.
Yes, that's one of the things that we're going to have to talk about. It really is dependent on how many parents choose to have their children learn through virtual learning as opposed to learning in the classroom. So we'll be looking at those numbers closely. And in my discussions with other districts and other HR professionals, we'll probably be looking at some teachers teaching virtually and some teachers teaching in the classroom. But most districts, and we're probably going to go with what most districts are doing, will still have the teachers come in for that. They'll still do virtual teaching. If they can't, if they have a medical reason for not being able to come in, then they'll have to apply for FMLA and that sort of thing, just like they would if they had a health concern in any other time besides this time. So if everything is opened up and the county is saying that we can be open, then the expectation is that teachers will teach. But if they do have some kind of health reason, of course, we'll take doctor's notes and follow the guidelines for under the Family Medical Leave Act.
Okay. So I'm going to move to point number 2 here, face coverings, otherwise thought of as masks. Right now, Jackson County has a face mask order in that basically if you're 5 years and older, you will wear a mask. And so we're going to follow the regulations of that entity. Kansas City has a similar mask order, except for they do allow the exception for kids not to wear masks. But when we open up district-wide, it'll be really important for consistency's sake. So we will, as a district, do it at each building with masks the same way. So right now, if this mask order is in place, for example, I don't anticipate it changing before the start of school. Masks will be required to be worn while they're there. And there's a lot of nuances to that. You know, we've worked with Jackson County to give you an example. You know, can you wear a clear face mask? The answer is yes to that. We've bought some of those and buying more. Can you take the mask off if you're teaching phonics? Because that's really important for the mouth of the teacher to be visual to the student in those cases. And the answer is yes to that. So again, and these masks are useful when social distancing cannot occur. So this is a other layer, if you will. And then I just recently read an article that UC Davis, I believe it was. I believe it was UC Davis had conducted a study on masks. And if you've heard, you know, throughout this time, you hear that masks help keep the people around you safe, right? We wear them to keep the other people safe. Well, the most recent study said that wearing masks will reduce your exposure, your personal exposure, by 65%. So more and more data comes in. It helps us inform our decisions. So again, the masks will be something we'll use in this layering approach because not everything can be done all the time. Any questions on masks? All right, ventilation is another facet that we're working on when it comes to layers. And if you've been participating in our board meetings, you noticed that we have agreed to purchase PCO or photocatalytic oxidation technology. And you'll currently see those in the space station, but also in hospitals and ambulances. We'll be applying them in our schools and school buses as a means to combat the virus. And basically what it does is it plasmizes the oxygen in the air into a hydrogen peroxide. Those molecules surround the germ and draw the hydrogen out and neutralize it. And so that's why we'll be placing them in places like school buses and a lot of our large gathering areas where we can. Mr. Tody, you and I have been talking about this quite a bit. I know you have some thoughts on this, so I'd give you that opportunity to bring those up if you like.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the conversations that you and I have had over the course of the last few weeks. This piece, because it does.
Mr. Tody, we can't hear you. I don't know if your speaker is cutting in and out.
That his internet was.
And we couldn't hear your full last question.
You might have to call him.
I couldn't tell if I was freezing up or if it was him.
It was him.
All right, you may have to reconnect. I'll ask a question while he's trying to get reconnected. Because we did move to purchase those quickly at our last meeting to make sure we would get them. What's the status of those?
Yeah, the order is in, and we're finalizing all of our locations for phase 1. And as Dr. Shelton mentioned at the last board meeting, we'll be applying to FEMA to cover 75% of the cost of this. So we'll see how that goes. Mr. Tody, you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I hope that if it doesn't work, it's another venue. But yeah, the issue with PCO is that there aren't enough of them, and they're back ordered. And secondly, they currently work only with HVAC, and we have a system where they will work on the geothermal system, but my friend was the one who developed also has the patent on this, and he's the guy that we're working with. And he walked the halls 6 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, and he called me and he said, you got a problem here with the PCO. And the PCO won't work in the hallways, and it won't work in the schoolrooms, the classrooms, but it won't work in the open areas, the hallways and so forth. I pushed on that, I leaned on that a bit. The reason it won't work in the hallways is because there's no ventilation, and there's no filtration, and there's no HVAC. So I asked then Dr. Hvac to help me how much space we have that has no ventilation, filtration, or HVAC, and it's 2.2 million space.
I think we might have lost him again. I know he was going to mention that district-wide, our facilities are 2.2 million square feet. Our hallways account for about 289,000 square feet. And I'm talking just in case Mr. Tody can hear me and may unfreeze and can respond. But apparently he is not able to. There he is.
Okay. So the issue is, what do you do about the hallways and the open areas? And that's an exposure for us that has been identified by the researchers. And they basically said, you've got to study that, you've got to come to a conclusion, and you've got to mitigate it. And if you can't mitigate it, you're relying on your social distancing and your masks. And the other issue is also, what is the quality of air without COVID? If in fact we have closed spaces without circulating air, what is the risk to our teachers and to our students, even without COVID? And so, I'm buckling on this one. There is a process that the CDC and the other regulators have stated really needs to be done, is that you have an independent engineering firm come in and help you make the decision about whether what you're going to do in the unventilated areas. And I think it's essential that we bring in some experts to walk these halls and tell us what kind of exposure we have, because we don't have filtration in those open areas. So that I think is a risk for the teachers. It's a risk for the students. And I think until we get to an answer on that, what kind of exposure we have, I think we've got to be, I'm not ready to vote for the plan. I'm not ready to vote for the plan unless we have experts that come in and will identify and help us magnify and quantify how we can resolve that issue.
And so, and I've mentioned to you that we would need to have experts do it. I am not capable of doing that, nor is anybody in my maintenance department. Mr. Moore, I think I might have spoke over you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I have a question for you and Mr. Tody, because I don't understand exactly what you're saying, because obviously we're going to have spaces in our buildings that cannot be covered by this new technology. Are you saying that we're wasting money by doing it at all? Because I think we're making as many areas better by doing this, and we already spent the money to do it. But are you saying that that's wasted money by doing this in some of the spaces, even though we're not doing it in all the spaces?
Are you asking me?
Yes. And
Dr. No, I don't believe it's a waste of money, but I do believe that the risk is high in the unventilated areas. So let me read you what the regulators say about it. I think it'll help you understand it's not me that's pressing.
Well, if possible, I mean, we have the information and you can send it. I'd like Dr. Hux to go on with his report first, if possible.
I'm not going to extend this. This is one paragraph, and I think it capsulizes the issue. Ventilation and filtration provided by heating HVAC systems can reduce the airborne concentration of COVID, and thus the risk of transmission through the air. Unconditioned spaces can cause thermal stress to people that may be directly life-threatening, and they may also lower resistance to infection. In general, disabling of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems is not a recommended measure due to reduce the transmission of the virus. Well, we don't have a problem about turning it off because we don't have an HVAC system in the unventilated areas. And I think that's a risk. You heard what the regulators are saying, and it's hard to dismiss the severity of the language and cautionary language that they're pressing.
Well, but again, this I'm not disagreeing with you, but it shows how quickly all of these things are changing, because today there's information coming out telling people they need to shut off their air conditioning systems. So
I don't know.
Under constant change. So,
I'm just reading you what they said.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but we're proceeding and making as many improvements as possible in a very short amount of time. Mr. Burton, were you wanting to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking that as far as you said, are we wasting our money? I think if those things work properly with air conditions, then we might want to look into maybe that's not something that we need to do.
Well, Mr. Burton, we'll look more into it, but the plan is to use them in certain areas right now, which is an improvement versus not using them anywhere, because air conditioning systems are going to need to be on. It's going to be 90 degrees during the day when kids come back. It's not possible for us to turn our HVAC systems off.
No, I wasn't saying to turn them off. I'm asking are we only using these systems in air-conditioned areas?
Apparently that is the case, where HVAC, really the only place we don't have HVAC and never have has been in the hallways.
Okay, so we are selecting places where they will be used in air-conditioned areas.
Indeed.
Okay.
And again, this is one facet of 20 in a layered approach. So
Okay. Yeah,
ventilation is not our only plan. It is a part of our plan.
Yeah, okay. I was just thinking that we were talking about that we didn't have, it couldn't work because we didn't have air conditioning in a large amount of area.
No, the majority of our space does. It's really about 10% of our 2.2 million square feet. I had architects pull our plans. It's about 289,000 square feet of space. We did also apply square footage space to that to apply HVAC to those, excusing any and all difficulties that would need to take place to do it, would be about $16 million to add HVAC into the hallways.
And I think we have to remember that purchasing these items was never a requirement in the first place. And so anything, if we do use them in air-conditioned areas, that's only an improvement.
And the CDC notes that where possible, improve ventilation. It doesn't mandate it.
How many more, Travis, will we need to buy to outfit all classrooms?
I think phase one is a third of what we needed, and I think we purchased 300. And again, we're working on this FEMA application, and I believe if I'm not misspeaking, Dr. Shelton can jump in on this, but if we're successful with that, our plan is to move to phase 2 and 3, which is to do the remainder of the areas.
So if I quantify that, they're 2/3 we'll need another, 600 units. So that's 600 classrooms that will not have the POC. Is that right?
I believe right now we're working with the engineer, Weston Warren, who is the expert here, and determined that we should put them in large gathering spaces as well as school buses. So I'm going with the expert opinion on where to place the first third. Again, they're not mandated, they're an improvement. And to give you an example, which I'll get to soon, in the cleaning section, that we're using electrostatic spraying devices, which have, one would argue, as much or if not a better response to the germs that may exist around the building. So again, this is a layered approach. Ventilation is not the plan. It is a portion of the plan. All right, so I'm moving on here to water fountains and water bottles. High touch points of water fountains. They are recommended to be turned off. We've done so during summer school. We purchased mountains of bottled water, and we'll be utilizing that as well as filling stations around the schools. But we'll be asking students to bring a water bottle full, and we can refill it or trade it out with a water bottle that we purchased. We were able to buy water bottles for about 4 cents per water bottle, and we have cases of them to be at each school. So that is an aspect of layering as well. Okay.
Hey,
yes.
I want to go back to Marlene, a conversation in reference to the teachers that might have conditions that does not permit them to be in the environment because of the possibility of them getting the virus. So my concern is, I think if I heard her correctly, Marlene, you can just tell me, any teacher that does have a health issue and cannot report will have to go on FMLA. Is that correct?
Yes, basically. Let me kind of go over that a little bit because I'm seeing a lot of chat about it, and so I can go ahead and kind of answer that question. I know we can't answer all your questions right now, but we will get to those. I mean, we definitely will look at all those and get those answered. First of all, if someone has COVID, has been exposed and been told by their doctor they have to get tested and quarantine, or if they're caring for a loved one with COVID, they can apply and qualify for emergency leave. And someone on the chat said that you have to use all your leave first before you can use that. And that's not true. If you say I have, I come to the district with my 10 paid leave days that the district gives you, and I get COVID, I can take 10 emergency leave days. Okay, first. Then if I run out of those 10 days and I need more, or I need those other days later, those are still there. So I want to make sure I clarify that you don't have to exhaust your other leave before you use that. If, like I said, there's that emergency leave, and then once that's exhausted, they can use their paid leave after 2 weeks. If someone has a health issue that they can't work, we can see if we can put an accommodation plan in place. You know, maybe we'll make sure that the person I can't think of anything right offhand, but we can just have the interactive process and do an accommodation plan. If the person has, let's say someone's been diagnosed with anxiety and they just can't work because they have anxiety, then it would be like anxiety related to anything that they're experiencing. So they would bring in a note, apply for leave under FMLA, and they would not lose their job, but they'd get to take time off based on what the doctor said they needed to do. And then they would use their paid leave for that. And then they would not lose their job, but they would use their paid leave for as long as they needed to do that. So hopefully that the COVID leave is specifically for people that have COVID and then also are caring for someone. In addition to that, and I don't want to go on too long, but in addition to that, if their child care has been canceled, they can apply for the special situation where they can get 2/3 paid, because if they have a note that says their daycare has been canceled and they have to care for kids, they could get 2/3 pay. So that's what's allowed also. We sent that out in a task through Talented Records, and all that information has been signed off on hopefully by everybody, but it's also on our website as well.
Well, that's not exactly what I wanted. What I'm looking for is a teacher is able to work. However, because of a health issue, they are choosing not to come out of the building. Can we use those teachers as teachers to do the virtual teaching?
Well,
and putting them.
Right. We're still discussing how to do that. It depends on how many people have to do that. If all our teachers are wanting to do that, at that point, it's not a reasonable accommodation, because we can't have, if we're going to have in-person school and everybody wants to do that, it's not really a reasonable accommodation. If it's only a couple of people want to do that, then it might be. So what we have to do legally is just go through the interactive process and look at their job, essential duties of their job, and see if we can figure out an accommodation or what we need to do with that. It's kind of person by person. So that's kind of where
but it is in the thought processing that
we're thinking about that. Yes, we're trying to look at that. The problem is, like I said, if everybody wants to do that, if we have half our teachers that just aren't comfortable or feel that they have elderly parents or something like that, then at that point, if everybody has a note, then at some point it won't be a reasonable accommodation. So we'll have to look at each one individually.
Okay, Marlene, my question basically dealt with those individuals that had health issues themselves. They would be sort of like on the first part of your listing as far as teachers to do the virtual teaching. That's my concern. Right. My concern is for those teachers that have a health issue themselves. I'm not talking about anyone that has family members or any other reasons. I'm talking about mainly the teachers that have a personal health issue, if they will be given greater consideration to be your virtual teachers.
At this point, that depends on how many of our teachers have. If we only have a handful and that's considered a reasonable accommodation, then yes, we will offer that as a reasonable accommodation. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, that's answering me, but I hope that we will give thought to that process more strongly in that sense. I would hate for a teacher that is able to teach, but unfortunately, because of personal health issues, finds it difficult to be in the environment because of the fact that there's a threat to them. I think the district should give greater consideration to that.
Okay. Well, we will certainly look into that, and I have been in contact with our attorneys as to what we need to do, what we need to do as far as being compassionate and yet non-discriminatory. We have to be careful that we make those decisions in a very objective, fair, non-discriminatory way, so that we wouldn't want to give one person consideration over another. So we have to be careful I have to be careful about what I promise, because I'm not sure what each person is going to what our situation is yet. I just don't know yet, but I can report back to you next month and kind of give you an idea of how many people we have had that have requested that accommodation.
I think it's safe to say we're treading new ground here, and there's not a lot of cut and dry answers to a lot of these questions, but I think this board demonstrated last semester that we care about our employees and doing what's the very best for them. So thank you, Ms. Salisbury, for bringing that up, and I'm sure that we're going to continue to do what's best. There's no one right or wrong answer to any of these things, and it's ongoing. So let's see, Dr. Hux, if you want to continue now.
There we go. Okay, so I'm going to move into sharing of supplies and items. We're going to limit that where we can. We're going to buy additional supplies to try to do that as much as possible. And then, like, give you an example. If we don't buy additional supplies, we may set those items aside or clean them so that they can be used again. But like library books, for example, you're seeing a lot of libraries around here that when books come in, they are set aside for 72 hours before they're put back into circulation, so that the any virus that may be on them is neutralized. So then cleaning. This section talks about both buildings and school buses. Again, the cleaning will have a layered aspect to it, but we'll be doing some additional cleaning, common touch points, and like I said, high touch points. Let's see, we talked about eliminating drinking fountains. We'll ensure things like paper towels, soap, hand sanitizer are all stocked and readily available. We'll have disinfectants and towels in each classroom to be able to disinfect surfaces throughout the day. So that might be door handles, handrails, elevator buttons, playground equipment, etc. Same thing for school buses.
Travis, on the cleaning, how's it looking with summer school right now, since we don't have the, I'm assuming we don't have the sprayers yet, and we don't have the PCO in place yet. So are we maintaining that rigid cleaning schedule right now?
We have increased custodial numbers for the buildings to help do that. So we have more hands on deck, if you will, to be able to do more cleaning. So we do fully anticipate that the electrostatic sprayers will arrive before school starts so that we can use those on the daily, as well as the PCO technology. It'll come in at some point at either into summer or beginning of the school year, and we'll install it as it comes in. So buses, each school bus will be wiped down after each run, including the morning run, afternoon run, and then special runs. And we describe here what they do. Again, we'll use the electrostatic sprayers, as I mentioned earlier. We'll use those on school buses. We can use those on playgrounds, for example, the hallways, spraying classrooms, etc. And they're really efficient. You can, on one charge, you can do an entire elementary building, for example, on one charge of one gun, and use 1 gallon of this material. It's both positively and negatively charges, so it wraps around and adheres to 360 degrees of items, so that it gets, you're not just getting the tops of the desk, for example. It'll wrap around underneath, because how kids will touch the bottom of their desks as well. So Let's see here. We have protocols in place, and I'm not trying to rush through this, but we are on page 4 of 27. So I'm just going to hit, high points of this. I'm not going to read this document in its entirety. We'll make it available very quickly to patrons, and probably at some time tomorrow would be my anticipation. But there'll be some training involved, talking about procedures for frequent touch points. We note things like inventory. We talk about changes that might need to be made, and if their supply changes occur, the use of hand sanitizer, the whole thing. It goes. We go through that. We also talk about measures to limit exposure. Teachers, will review new routines. New procedures will be taught and practiced in all classrooms for arrival, dismissal, and lunch protocols, and so on. And these are aspects that will be detailed out more in the building plan, especially as it pertains to the building level staff, like the teachers and teaching assistants and so on. But some of this stuff's very logical. Employees should keep their office and workspace as clean as possible by cleaning, disinfecting their workstations, and that sort of thing. So in here, we talk about, coughing and sneezing, and, avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Some of those things you've already heard a lot about. We talk about classroom cleaning here. And, some of this can't be done all the time, but like, for example, here we ask staff who do not have contractual responsibilities after school to leave their classrooms at a reasonable time each day, so that the cleaning can take place, for example. So there are going to be some changes in how we behave day to day based on, some of our cleaning needs.
Travis,
yeah,
if you can hear me.
I can.
Are we going to make any special, have any special procedures for substitute teachers?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to. We'll take a lot of this information. Most schools prepare a subfolder for their subs on things they'll need to do, the lessons they'll need to teach. Some of that'll be last minute.
I'm saying,
HR is considering training. Like, for example, we do train our substitute teachers on school safety. I'm sure HR is making the same considerations here.
I was thinking more in terms of COVID. Are we going to test substitute teachers?
Are we going to test them?
Yeah.
We're only if we put a testing protocol in place. Our district nor any others around here will have one in place at this time. So
Cody, they'll go through the same protocol as staff would any day walking into the building with the temperature checks, et cetera. That's the same protocol we'd be following with subs.
But it sounds to me like at this stage, you don't anticipate a testing protocol for the foreseeable future.
Again, that's where we'll take direction from Jackson County Health Department and or Kansas City Health Department. We'll certainly put in place any of those requirements that they create and work with them and guide us on how to actually implement that, including on what to do when we test positive with someone. So, which we'll talk about in here in a little bit further. Okay, so cleaning precautions here, student teacher, the area will be closed off, not available until clean and disinfected. This is, if we have concerns or if someone's tested positive, for example. Then we have cleaning commonly used equipment and common areas. I talked about that earlier. Like if it were supplies, for example, we might clean them before we put them back out into use. And we talked about cleaning high touch points. If an outside group ends up using one of our spaces, like a cafeteria or something like that, we'll have to clean after they're finished with that use. And they'll likely be incurred more fees than they would have in the past due to the more cleaning that would have to occur. Okay. Number 7 here, hygiene. This is going to be important. Hand sanitizer, soap, water, and disinfectant will be available. But we'll also be spending a lot of time, working with kids and everybody else about coughing and sneeze etiquette, covering your mouth, using a tissue, throwing it away, things like that. Let's see, guide markers, that's a fancy way of saying, tape or signage that we'll be placing to help note. So for example, maybe out in front of a bathroom at a given building, they might place X's, 6 feet apart, so that if they're standing in line to wait in the bathroom, they can use that to guide the social distancing versus, trying to shuffle kids to stay apart from each other. Meals, this is somewhat dependent upon the school building, its size and its makeup, but it's quite possible that students will be eating their meals in their classroom. It's quite possible that it could be a blended approach. Give you an example, so the kids aren't eating in their classroom every day. Some days they might eat in the lunchroom while other kids eat in their classroom and rotate that out. They might make use of other spaces to be able to spread out and have lunch too. Again, every building's a little different in how it's set up. Some of them are drastically different in their square footage size. So, but
Travis?
at worst case, they'll be eating in their classroom. Yes.
Travis, I think this would be a good time to utilize some of those outdoor spaces that we have at some of the schools at lunchtime, if possible, especially during nice weather.
Exactly, and exactly what you said. Our building administrators, they're going to be working with their staff on this as well, but it'll be, how can we think outside the box and expand our area so we can do things give you an example. We don't want teachers not to have a lunch break. It's very important for teachers to have a lunch break. I was a teacher, and if I didn't get a lunch break, I probably wouldn't be that happy the rest of the day. So we've got to come up with ways, for that to protect the staff as much as anything. But we also don't want the students to feel like they're stuck in a classroom all day long, for example. So we're going to have to do a lot of thinking outside the box. And again, every building's different. If you think about South High, you think of the courtyard they have and some of the spaces they have, and that looks very different at Raytown High. So who has a lunchroom that's basically in a basement. So again, while we have this here, there is that discretion at buildings. But I will tell you, for the lunch piece, it's essentially going to be no touch. I mean, there'll be plexiglass barriers between the staff. People will be wearing their masks, and kids will be, there's no more dipping your hand in the milk cooler to grab the milk and grabbing the condiments and cutlery and that sort of thing. That'll all be handed to the students. There'll be no touching the keypad to put a keypad in, things like that. It's essentially meant to be a no-touch situation. And Dr. Young has it figured out pretty well, I think, as far as how it runs in the cafeteria. So.
Also, Travis, if we're looking at eating in the classroom some, there are peanut allergies and stuff where, they, how does that, because that could contaminate their room where they're in most of the day.
Right. Well, we already do the after-school meal program and that sort of thing, but Dr. Young's department spends a lot of time on the allergens aspect with regard to children and safety to that. So we will be we will have that awareness and give you an example, like an after-school meal program where kids' lunches go to the classroom. Generally, let's say in elementary school, it's 4 to 6 kids that might have this alternate meal, for example. So, visitors and volunteers, this will be limited. This is a guideline, and we'll ask patrons, not to unnecessarily come to the building. They won't be able to come visit their kids' classroom like they have in the past and things like that. And we'll and volunteer use will even be limited. it's going to be very important that the first 30 days of school that we just figure out what we're doing, you know, and we don't want to create exposure for people outside the district, and we certainly don't want to create exposure for our staff, who I would argue would be the vulnerable, and then students as well. So we will have limitations. We'll reevaluate that every 30 days. You know, if we change phases where we're in a light phase, maybe we change that. But that's going to be a guideline you'll see in pretty much all the plans in the school districts in the district area.
So Travis,
Yes.
Do the visitors / volunteers include the Ray Friends?
Let me see here.
I don't see that.
I'm kind of looking through here. I believe it does. Again, it's pretty much all those volunteer groups.
Okay.
Our goal
So
is
they
not
just
to
won't be.
close it down, but our goal is to figure out how to make all this work. And we'll take the first 30 days to figure that out. It may be the day 31 Ray Friends come back because we figured out how to do it.
Well, and I don't think they start the first month anyway, do they? Or maybe, I don't know.
But that would be ideal, you know, that would work out.
Okay.
So communal gatherings, it's a fancy way to say, you know, assemblies and field trips. Those will be limited. You know, it may be that in a elementary school, middle or high school, whatever, they can maybe do an assembly outside somewhere, maybe in the stadium or something like that. But if they can't do the social distancing piece, they won't be able to do the assembly. Field trips will also have be severely limited because, you know, we need to limit exposure to students and staff. We will not be allowing groups to go to places where they might be exposed to strangers who are also there. I'm thinking of a museum, for example. Now, if that museum is only open to our school that day for that time, you know, that's something to consider. But if we're not going to go to a place where there's many other people, strangers, if you will, that may or may not be infected, and then can cause potential transmission for our students and staff. So communal spaces here, we'll limit their use, or we'll use them in different ways. You know, cafeterias, gyms, libraries, playgrounds. You know, it might be that static, for elementary, for example, static groups, classrooms go out and play. There might be more recess times than there used to be to try to rotate that out. You know, again, they'll be cleaned frequently, but give you an example, libraries may be limited to just checking out books. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, again, we need to be mindful of the social distancing. So I mentioned static groups a little bit here. This can't be done everywhere. Again, this is one of our 20 layers. That's why we have multiple layers, but where we can, we will. It's easier to do in the elementary. You know, you're in a classroom, you're with your teacher most of the day, that sort of thing. But you start getting into secondary, elementary, or not elementary, middle school and high school, it can definitely become more difficult and less likely. So schools might take advantage of modified block scheduling that at the high school, but maybe not at the middle school. It's whatever will be the best fit. Again, the building administrators will work to develop as much static grouping as possible. Notice here, you know, bathroom capacity may be limited. Example, 1 student at a time. That's an example. If you have 1,000 students at South High and 6 sets of bathrooms, you can't do that. So there'll be limits, but it'll be based on what we can do in practice. Schedule staggering. There's, depending on the grade level and the building and that sort of thing, this stuff can look very different. But we're talking, you know, an example here is arrival and dismissal, but might have multiple points of entry, or you will have multiple points of entry, you know, for different groups, whether that's transportation, car riders, walkers, and so on, which we do to a degree. Something we'll be doing this year that we haven't done in the past because it's really hard to do, which is to work with our parents so that not everybody shows up at the same time. At the end of the day, we dismiss in a more of an orderly fashion, the car riders and the walkers and the buses. But in the mornings, just pretty much everybody shows up as they show up. But we're going to have to really be strict on separating those arrivals, because you don't want, 1,000 kids showing up at the same time. And so we're going to have to work with our families to make sure they do that. And will it be perfect? I doubt it, but I think we can make some progress in it. Physical barriers, we'll be placing these where we notice they're needed to be. So reception areas, cafeterias, where the kitchen is, things like that. I can picture those, going up and then realizing, hey, we may need one here or there, and we'll just keep adding them. Hygiene supplies, we'll make sure to have the supplies on hand. It's also part of the facility operations department to monitor supply levels of all these PPE aspects, because on the survey, that was a concern for families and staff, like running out of this stuff. So Josh, for example, will communicate out to the patrons, stakeholders, if you will, on a regular basis, our supply levels, so that we can be transparent, for one, and two, hopefully reduce any stress wherever we can. Isolation room, if you ask Shirley, we do not like this term because it sounds bad, but it's the term that the CDC uses. So we're calling it the precautionary room, but I've labeled it isolation room here so that you understand that it's related to the guidelines. But we'll have these in the building, so if someone's exhibiting symptoms, that sort of thing, they will be separated so that we can limit exposure, get their parents called, get them picked up, and so on. All right, health checks. This one we're going to have to talk about a little bit. If you notice here, it says students will have temperature checks upon arrival. I'm not sure that we can do that. We'll be working with the committee more in depth on that. I've talked to all the surrounding districts who've already determined they cannot do it. So we'll be talking about that. The concern there is if you have 1,500 kids show up and one nurse, that you can already do the math and know that that's just not possible. It would literally take all the teachers and IAs and everybody to be doing temperature checks. So we may look at doing, well, we're still going to look at it and see if we come up with a way, but if not, we'll look at alternate measures. I mean, the plan needs to be something we can really put in place. And, as we've looked at this, it's been a goal of ours, but I don't see that it can occur. Not seeing other districts being able to put it in place. There might be some different type of screening, visual perhaps, I don't know. It could be assessments being done. For example, if we might be asking teachers, for example, to do a screening log or something like that. So we're going to have to vet that one out more. I will tell you, we're here 2 weeks earlier to you than we planned on when we started reopening committee. We wanted to be done July 27th to give us time, but it's the way the board meetings fall. So here we are today. So we do have an item or two like this still in discussion on how we can accomplish it.
Travis, are we doing temperature checks in summer school right now? I thought.
Well, we have a limited number of students also. We have 10 kids per classroom. So where I'm going with this is if we had the 100% attendance effort going, I don't think it's possible. If we did the 50%, the 20%, it may become possible. But so you're right, Beth. But again, the pilot we're running in elementaries right now is a less than 100% attendance model. Okay, staying home. it's pretty simple to say, but I'll be the first to tell you as a parent, I've given my kid Tylenol before I sent her to school, but not during the COVID era, I assure you. And that's something, that is a concern of all of ours. I'm bringing it up because everybody's thinking about it anyway. I'm not going to try to hide that whatsoever. Our goal is to be transparent here. That is a concern of ours, and we're going to have to be very alert to that. But our goal is to have people stay home when they're sick. I mean, that is one of the layers and ways simply to mitigate the spread. So this also goes into, when you're in close contact and would be considered one of the people that would need to stay home. So, close contacts defined as being within 6 feet of someone, not wearing a mask for 15 minutes or more, who tested positive for COVID-19. And it talks about, the need to quarantine for 14 days and that sort of thing. So we'll have those aspects out there. So if people are wondering, gosh, how long do I have to stay home? We'll have the answer for them. And a lot of this stuff will be pulled out into FAQs. So this would be an example of a perfect FAQ question.
Travis.
Yes, sir.
Also, well, first I was having trouble wondering how a quick reference guide could be 22 pages long, but knowing the master plan has 178 pages. So I would say that people would probably go there first if they want to see more detailed answers to some of these things you're going through.
Well, you're exactly right. What we've tried to do is shrink this down into, bites. It's how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? So our goal here is to have something that's indexed that you can quickly reference, is why we call it a quick reference guide, and seek some information on that particular topic you're trying to get some information on. So it talks about, when can a person return to school? That's, a lot of people are like, when can I come back into the public, and not be thought of as a leper? So here are those guidelines. And it also talks about high-risk population. This topic's come up through Ms. Salisbury as well as Dr. DeVilbiss, and people make comments about, population high risk, whether it's families and staff members. An evaluation does need to be done. And we want our staff members, for example, to do that and determine whether or not it is safe for them to work. I certainly would feel awful if someone that was, medically fragile came back to work and became ill and something happened. So that's what this high-risk population talks about here. Signage. So signage is very important. It's just to remind people things on the bus, to not, things like how to properly wipe your nose and sneeze and things like that, to social distance and so on. It's just going to have to be in people's faces constantly, or they'll stop doing it. And so the signage will even have to change and move around because people get used to it. So those were the 20 guidelines that we went through. Any questions on those before we move into enrollment?
I had a quick question, Travis.
Yes.
Did I see right that no backpacks for anybody?
Yeah, that's currently our goal. Yep.
Pre-K through 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
So pre-K, for example, they might have their own boxes at school where they'll keep their stuff in. Now in middle schools and high schools, they might need a backpack because they won't use the lockers. So they might carry their items around with them. So it'll be different depending on the grade level.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Travis.
Yes.
You were talking about temperature check. I was just thinking, what about individual? Each student is checked in their classroom in reference to their temperature.
Well, yeah, and I kind of mentioned that earlier that it would have to be the work of many if we were able to do it. So that's the conversation we're going to have to vet out with the committee, and we'll be meeting again tomorrow. So that will be a topic of discussion tomorrow with the Reopen RQS committee, because again, you know, in summer school, it's possible because we have 10 kids in a classroom. It's possible in our 20% attendance plan. It's maybe possible in our 50% attendance plan. I can't guarantee that, but maybe. But it's just does not seem real for our 100% attendance plan. And again, I've not found a district in the metro area who is doing it. And so I don't want to set us up for failure. The plan needs to be realistic. So we'll have that discussion. We'll go from one end to the other trying to figure out a way we can make it happen that people can get on board with. Because, you know, give you an example, if teachers do it, you know, I'm certainly not trying to put a teacher in a position to be being exposed. So we'll have to talk through all that and see how everybody feels about it too. So it'll be a lively discussion, but it'll be one that takes place tomorrow, and hopefully we can figure out the direction there.
And Travis, isn't the idea of the temperature checks to prevent more people from exposure? And so as you want to have that done as soon as possible before someone is inside the building.
Sure.
Or inside a room.
Yeah, so give you an example. There's two schools of thought on this. The one you discussed just then, which is temperature checks are great in that if someone does have a temperature, we can eliminate them from the group before they go into exposed. The other school of thought is many, especially children, are asymptomatic and are not going to have a temperature. And that school of thought considers the temperature taking somewhat pointless, because you're not catching there's so many people without symptoms, so many kids in particular. So it depends on the school of thought there, really, is what it comes down to. Shirley, if you're on, I'd love for you to talk about enrollment briefly, about how it's online and that sort of thing. Can you do that? I just need to take a drink of Gatorade here. I've been talking too long. I hope she's here. If not, I'll get in another section.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Rachel. Okay. Let's see. Hi. How's everyone today? Yes, we have been working for a while now on all enrollments being all online. Even new families now can register online. So we've opened up the SISK portal to support new families actually creating a profile and then actually uploading documents into the SISK portal, which is a great plus for us if you can upload. You can also email, still fax, and we have a Dropbox now that we have placed on the outside of the building. So patrons don't actually have to come in to see us. If by chance they do need support, and sometimes they do, we have families that need interpreters. The family support programs and I would make an appointment for them to come in and also schedule the interpreters to come in at the same time so that we limit the capacity in the building. So our goal is to actually have one family in and almost complete within an hour, hour and a half before we set the next appointment. And so we have that window of time that we're creating, but we can squeeze it if we need to and make sure that we get all the patrons in that need that assistance. We will still also be working the phone lines and all of the email that comes through the district until, of course, way past the beginning of the school year. And we have a small staff that will be housed inside the enrollment center, and their primary focus is to push electronic documents from the time we start to the time we end. So that's, in a nutshell, continuing what we already have in place and adding new wrinkles to it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Early. I'm now refreshed with some Gatorade. I'll move into orientation. You know, we ask questions about this to our parents and staff, and the majority of people felt like it was a good idea. So obviously this is going to become part of our plan. to orient kids on those first days, let alone we'll be talking about it all year on how things are going to look different in their building. And an example of that might be your items, your personal items go in this plastic box, or you're going to carry your backpack with you throughout the day, and that sort of thing. So that will occur. So we also talked about earlier in the guidelines piece, staggering schedules. So here we are back at arrival and dismissal. And our goal here is to avoid congregating large numbers of kids. And, so we'll be splitting that up. And then when a kid comes into the school, they won't be lingering anywhere. They'll need to report to their homeroom or their first hour class, that sort of thing, to stay separated. And again, this stuff is written here, and it'll be worked with the administrators and their staff members on how best to accomplish it. And again, we'll seek feedback. This has to stay somewhat vague here because, again, elementary, middle, and high school all look very different on a school day. And even elementaries do. For example, at Little Blue Elementary, I don't believe there's any walkers just due to where the building's located, right? And then you go to many of our schools, Southwood, for example, where there's so many car riders that, their cars are sitting out on Raytown Road, even though we're actually using the church parking lot next door and so on. So there's variation to this, but just know that the goal here is to avoid large congregates, okay? This is a rehash of the documentation, that Dr. Huff talked about earlier, and he pulled that out and spent time on you with that in particular, because it's that important. And so that first document he talked to you about, I basically pasted that information in here. If anybody has any additional virtual learning option questions, we can talk about those now for sure. Now, where I want to go into, this is one of those interesting topics, attendance calendar, and so possible variations. If you've opened up a return plan for North Kansas City or some of these other school districts, you'll see that they have multiple variations, and so we do as well. And so again, Jackson County Health Department, even Kansas City Health Department will have a lot of authority about what we can do. So for example, if Jackson County is in a phase that doesn't allow more than 50% attendance, we certainly can't have 100% attendance. So, and our thought is if they have that in place, they're doing it based on, the science, the caseloads, and so on. They're helping protect us as a school district and that sort of thing. So because of all these unknowns, we've come up with these variations. So I'm going to scroll down here just a little further, and this will look prettier in the document that will go out to patrons. But scenario one is your 100% attendance. All kids can go to school every day. But we also know that even if we were to do that today, we looked in our surveys, 15% of our families, and this was several weeks ago, 15% of our families said they would not be returning while COVID is an issue. The caseloads have risen. So is that still 15% or is it 30%? We don't know. We'll find out when we start the enrollment process. And scenario two is what you would call your 50% situation. Group A would come on Monday, for example, group B would come on Tuesday and switch back and forth. And this even has some variation abilities to it. Dennis Helsel mentioned earlier, it could be 1 week, things like that. We'll have to still vet some of that piece out as we're getting feedback from our patrons once we push this out. But this is a sample scenario of a 50% attendance. And then we have here 20% attendance. This might be, for example, And oh, by the way, on that model, the 50% attendance, Monday, Wednesday for one group, Tuesday, Thursday for another, and then Friday, allowing, staff time, to do the things they would need to do because of all this difference in teaching aspects of groups online versus in person and so on. The 20% model here, you've got basically 20% of your kids come every day, Monday through Friday, and the rest of the time is virtual learning. And then you have your scenario 4, which we experienced this past spring, which is virtual learning only. So again, we'll be informed through the health departments on what we can do. And then also, this is where I say again, I know that this district, the people in charge, the administrators, the board members, we will do what's right and what's best for students and staff here. So, but we still have some time, and we'll solicit feedback and monitor changes and so on. But our goal right now, we want parents to know our goal is for everybody to come back safely August 26th, but who knows what will happen, okay? I promise you we'll do the right thing. We're not going to ignore the Jackson County Health Department, for example. All right, go ahead.
I just want to expand again a little bit on that. Part of our thinking with this whole thing is some of these things are not things we want to do. We are trying to plan on what somebody else might tell us we have to do. Even if it's one day before school is supposed to start, we're trying to develop these plans. What if someone tells us this is what we have to do? Even if they don't give us any warning, we've planned ahead for a possible scenario. Now, there may be some that come along that we don't have any plans for that are out of our control, but we're trying to do the best of anticipating what other people might tell us we have to do, even though there are things we don't want to do.
That's exactly right, Mr. Moore. Electives and special classes. This section here just references the health department guidelines. In our electives and special classes often require close interaction. And so our goal would be to try to have those, but do it in a responsible way using our layered approach. So that's basically what it talks about here. It talks about how some of them might have to be done differently, like physical education, weather permitting, done outside, that sort of thing. So it's going to be interesting to say the least, but this is a plan to deviate from, if you will. And so does anybody, like Dr. Huff, do you have anything you wanted to add to the electives and special classes before I move on?
The only thing is, as we've mentioned before, it's all very fluid, and there is going to be a wide range of requirements based on the elective classes that we have. Just as an example, the far extreme is going to be band and vocal music, where there's a lot of singing and blowing and that sort of thing. And so you just have to take consideration for each individual class environment, what we're going to need to do in each setting.
All right. So Dr. Cordell, I haven't checked to see if he's on, but he spent some good amount of time on this social emotional health, which is really important. This is stressful for kids, their parents, and so on. So in this section, it's highlighted, family basic needs, mental health needs, supporting teachers and staff, supporting family stability, student engagement, grief, loss, and trauma, informed care, that is, and addressing inequities. And he talks about what those are, and basically talks about, the goal to give, the full effort. Dr. Cordell, are you on to speak any about that, or do you want to speak about that?
Dr. Hux, yes, thank you. Just when you are thinking of the social and emotional health of students, they've been in isolation for an extended period of time, and returning to school, there may be we're anticipating a higher need of social emotional support from the guidance counselors, social workers, and building administration. So those folks working together as a team, addressing family basic needs, Second item would be the health and mental wellness of students as they're returning to school and adjustment back into a full-time school setting or whatever the setting may be. Supporting teachers and staff with re-engaging students for classroom engagement for learning. Many students have obviously been out of school since March, and re-engagement for academics is going to be a priority as well. Supporting family stability, that is the highest needs of families, and working with those high needs families to ensure that they have the resources and connections available. Student engagement in the learning process, and then also grief, loss, and trauma-informed care, knowing that students have missed out on celebrations, end of the year ceremonies, different functions that are celebrations, and also loss, maybe family members or a loss of a grandparent or a loved one. And those things take time with healing and conversation with other adults. Then also addressing inequities. At a time like this, it's easy to see that, for example, internet access is a huge key component to learning, food stability, unemployment of parents, and have lack of resources to care for their family, transportation barriers. So these are a lot of components that when school resumes, guidance counselors, social workers, and building administration will be working together as a team to help families as needed.
Thank you, Dr. Cordell. The next section, it's fairly lengthy here, as you might expect. This is athletics and activities. And again, this similar to some of the other sections above, talks about, the guidelines that we'll have to follow with Jackson County, MSHA, the Suburban Conference, and others that may have impact on us about having sports. If you look in this paragraph right here, you would see that, the most recent Jackson County Health Department information suggests that contact sports will be allowed to begin practice with contact after June 22nd. So we're always looking for updated information on what we can do and so on. And Nick Atkins, are you on? Is it, as I kind of go through here, I'd love for you to jump in. But we also note here co-curricular activities and clubs, that's speech and debate, Scholar Bowl band, choir, orchestra, theater, all those sorts of things, and which are clubs as well. And again, our goal is to try to have those, but it might be limited in capacity. Certain activities within those clubs might be limited due to social distancing needs and so on. Let's see here. Nick, were you on? Okay. Here we talk about precautions to minimize risk. Filling out the questionnaire before participation. Let's see. Talk about size, gatherings, talk about things like commonly touched surfaces to be avoided, locker rooms being disinfected. And then the information here, like positive test for COVID-19, this is the same information you saw up in the health services section about, symptoms, presenting symptoms, when you're in close contact, and when a person can return to school. We have additional measures here for the athletics and activities and clubs, requiring that group participate in only physically distant or non-sport specific activity, restricting the group from practicing on campus for an extended period of time. And again, that would be if there's issues with COVID, for example. We have here information about spectators at games, competitions, and performances. It's possible that they won't be allowed. It's possible that there might be a highly reduced percentage allowed. It just depends on what the activity is. So for example, let's say it's golf, and let's say golf is happening and a competition is happening. You can easily see parents social distancing, walking around the golf course, following their students around watching. But other things, they might not be able to do that. Nick, would you like to jump in?
Sure. athletic directors and activity coordinators are going to start working in the next week or so on our home contest at both the middle school and high school. We have anywhere between 2 and 3 venues at each building, and we're going to look at what limited spectators look like. Possibility for the Raytown South football team, hey, you get 2 tickets per kid, similar to what Misha did at the end of the basketball season. And then we would also look at like what each venue would operate with a full capacity. The other thing that we are waiting on is for the suburban conference is put a committee together to talk about what suburban conference games are going to look like to try to have a conference-wide system. And so we're kind of waiting on that information as well.
All right, thank you, Nick. Again, daily precautions here noted things like, if you're sick, stay home. But there's other things down here, practice the physical distancing, washing and sanitizing your hands, and so on. We even have staff members to minimize risk, as far as disinfecting, maybe weights, equipment, and so on. And, verifying coaches and participants are symptom-free. We talked about the screening with the questionnaire above earlier, and so on. Anything else you wanted to mention on athletics and activities, Nick, before we move on to public use? All right.
No, sir.
So, okay. So, public use of facilities, our goal, is to allow that. It'll be on a case-by-case basis. Again, we're not going to promote any activities that would go against the guidelines that we'll be using in our district. That's how it works. When you're on a school district, property, you're limited to following the policies of the district, and the same thing will happen here. So we'll be vetting those out before we say yes to those. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, some people might not want to do them because the costs will likely increase due to the increased number of custodial cleaning amounts that would occur after the activities completed. So our goal is not to reduce it, but to be logical about it, because again, we don't want a bunch of outside groups coming in and causing, shooting ourselves in the foot before we start the race by contaminating the building. So at first, we'll probably be very, very strict with this while we're just figuring out how school looks every day. Then we can allow some of these ancillary things to take place more and more as we figure things out. Transportation, I'm going to spend some time on this one. I'm sure Kevin is available to participate as well, but we surveyed this pretty heavily, and based on our responses, the plan calls for limited seating. So meaning 1 student per bench. Now, if you do that, you can only transport about half the kids you've transported in the past. There's a couple of ways we're looking at meeting this need. One is the opting in or out, if you will, of transportation. Because when we surveyed our families, a vast majority of them said they would consider opting out of transportation to allow for the highest need kids. So we'll be considering that, along with the number of kids who won't be returning because they'll be in virtual learning only. But there will possibly be a need to increase the student eligibility ridership boundary from its current radius of 0.5 miles higher than that. And how high depends on the participation in opting for allowance of families with highest need and the number of students who will not be attending because they're in virtual learning. And by the way, that's really for our 100% attendance plan. You go to a 50% attendance plan, a 20% attendance plan, virtual learning plan, the ridership issue basically takes care of itself. As we talked about earlier, there's additional cleaning and so on that'll need to be done. And if you look here at bus precautions, I talk about 1 Students will sit one to a seat using all rows, and they'll be staggered. There's a lot of aspects to this. Mr. Easley, are you want to speak to this at all? Okay. We talk about loading. Loading would look different. Think of it as when you're at a wedding, and the pastor dismisses everybody one at a time, and so we'll fill from back to front and load from and then unload from front to back, things like that to limit that interaction. Students will be wearing masks and so on. All right, Mr. Easley, go ahead and feel free to speak to this more in depth if you like.
This summer school program has given us a great opportunity to test out some of the things we've been talking about as far as loading and unloading and the logistics. So in the morning, students load from back to front so that we're minimizing the number of times they cross paths. And then in the afternoon, the buildings are given seating charts so the students are loaded in the proper order so that they exit from front to back. We've implemented some new cleaning processes and done some professional development with drivers so that they know how to disinfect the vehicle between runs, utilizing several different cleaning agents to keep students safe and keep our staff safe.
All right. So also, we got electrostatic sprayers, photocatalytic technology, and stuff that we'd mentioned earlier in the cleaning and the driver training and the aspects to that as well. Anything else you want to mention, Kevin, before we move on to before and after care?
Not necessarily. In case anybody else has questions for me, you could take those.
Okay. So we're on page 25 here, making some headway at 9:17 in the evening here. So here we are at Great Expectations Before and After Care. Tanya, are you on?
Yes, I'm here, Travis.
We can go through this together, or if they're really the highlights, the differences that you'd like for folks to know that would obviously that's in this document that you would want to communicate out. Anything you'd like to say, rather?
Well, I will say that one of the things with having summer school, it's giving us a opportunity to have a taste test of how things would go during the school year. One of the other things I might add, with the different scenarios that you had offered up earlier when speaking about the attendance days, Great Expectations is also looking at how we can provide additional support to parents who may need child care on throughout those scenarios as well.
Okay, but if you look at this plan, it talks about what it looks like, when kids arrive, the procedures they'll go through, and again, it also mentions, taking temperatures, for example, and that may be practical and hard to do for Great Expectations due to the limits of their students. Again, it'll be a discussion in the committee. Tanya, anything else you wanted to note?
Not at this time. We have been taking temperatures of the children in the morning. We also take temperatures for the children at dismissal. As you talked about earlier, we do have those parents who do self-medicate. So we do take those temperatures at dismissal as well to catch that if needed. So far, everything is going very well. It has allowed our staff also to see what the stress points are with implementing different programs and looking at the sanitation schedules and how we need to rotate supplies and different things like that. So summer school has offered us a great platform to really test out some of these applied theories that we're talking about.
Thank you, Tanya. So that's the document, the patron document that will be going out, and those are the topics of coverage. And And if you look at other district plans like North Kansas City or others, it'll have those similar components. Is that every component? It is not, but we can only come up with so much at a time. Also, back on the master plan document, there are hundreds of pages of building level plans. Every building, even though it's an elementary, middle school, or high school, has its own plan. Matt Jones's plan will look different than Danielle Miles' plan, even though they're elementary. They'll have similar components, but again, because of the physical nature, the student levels that they have, and so on, there's going to have to be some differences as well. So it's important that we allow that flexibility. There are principals from each level on tonight, and so if you do have any questions as it relates to the building level plans, based on what you've seen here in this patron document, I'm sure we could go over those questions. So with that being said, any questions?
Travis?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just, this is astounding, of course, but I'm glad to see Dr. Cordell's input. I think it's really important about mental health issues, because in that last Children's Mercy Town Hall, a clinical psychologist spoke quite a bit about mental health and behavior issues. And she said there may be an uptick in student behavior. She didn't say it's likely, she just said there may be. But it makes sense, doesn't it? That kids have been gone for a long time. And so with everything else that staff has to consider, I know they're considering this in their building plans, but they've got to really think about how they're going to make that behavior real tight, at first. Because
Definitely.
It's going to be important. There are going to be a lot of mental health issues and behavior issues.
That's right. I agree. Anybody else have any questions?
Travis, as I'm reading through, I see that we're planning for 100% everybody going back into school, which I believe should be the goal. But could it be possible that we could, seeing that we had the surveys, and as we get closer to the start date, that we could actually, I don't think we'll ever have 100% before the start date, because people are not willing to send their kids to school. Hopefully we won't have all virtual learning. I know, like in my church in particular, we've already figured out that only 30% of our people are going to come back right now. And so that's quite helpful in the planning. But one thing they do is if we decided that what we were going to do and not wait to be told what to do, with the idea of it being possibly being worse than that. And you know what I'm saying? Like if we know 15% of the people are not coming back, then why wouldn't we plan for that?
I will say
we are. Go ahead, Dr. Markley.
Mr. Burton, right now, let's say school is going to start next Monday.
Yeah.
We are under a 50% capacity, both KC-Mo and Jackson County. So we couldn't have more than 50% of what that building would hold anyway at this point. And that's where it's going to hinge on what we can do. Do I anticipate us being 100% by the time school comes around? I doubt it. The numbers don't show that, and you don't see that coming from either Kansas City, Missouri, or Jackson County, moving away from that number. What this is going to do, and if you look at the numbers that Dr. Mixon gave us, at about we did a 50% capacity of the building, and about 60% of those kids showed up for summer school. So we're at about 30%. So that might be a pretty good forecast of where we're going to be come August the 26th when we start. Maybe about 30% of our kids are going to show up, but we won't know that until we see the enrollment forms when they come in. But I would guess that we're going to be in that somewhere in that 30 to 50% range of total capacity. One, because we see the kids that are in summer school, and two, we don't think we're going to be beyond that 50% capacity from our local agencies.
Yeah, so I'm wondering why the document is saying that we're planning, not that we're not having a goal of that, but we're planning for 100%.
It's 100% of the students are eligible to return.
Oh,
so we in no way, shape, or form, on no day in school do we have 100% of the kids, not the first day or the last. Our average attendance is 95% or less sometimes. So it's just to say that in that plan, 100% are eligible to come, but you can choose virtual learning if you want to, but we don't. And then where the 50% is, we would literally, let's say by bus stop, determine a given family can come on Mondays and Wednesdays, and a given family can come on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, and that's why we'll call the 50% plan and so on. But yeah, it's really just to say that you're eligible. Right.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Well, Dr. Markley?
Yes.
You said Jackson County right now is saying 50%, but when does that order go until? Is there a end date for that, or is it just indefinite?
I think it's to the end of this month, but they'll come back prior to that. We'll have an idea if they intend on keeping it or extending it, probably, a few days prior to that order ending.
Okay.
I get a question. Voting on this tonight, Mr. President. Rick?
Sorry, take myself off mute. Yes, we've already had a motion and a second.
Okay.
And it is a draft plan. We're voting to basically approve the work of the committee.
Yeah, and we're
voting on something tonight that we know is probably going to be changed tomorrow when the committee meets again. It's just is a vote to move ahead with this plan, even though there's a lot of work still to be done and there's a lot of changes that will still be made.
Can you still hear me? Oh, can you? Okay, because I've got another piece of equipment here I could go to. I want to I just want to go back brought up previously, and I want to and Dr. Markley, I want to address the issue to you as the chief executive officer. I mean, I keep looking at
He's froze again.
Mr. Toady.
Uh-oh, hang on. Oh, this is disgusting.
Now you're back.
All right, hang on. Okay, I apologize. I got to get that fixed. The issue is the risk is that we're overlooking these unventilated areas. And think about this decision here. We've got we have substantial risk in the unventilated areas. We've held him out to be an expert, and I think we've acknowledged that view tonight. We've heard it. We've spoken about it. The CDC material that I read says that when we have a situation, responsibility to evaluate the risk and mediate it. That's what I read a little while ago. So we can't say at some future day know about this. I'm asking you, is it unreasonable to get a proposal, qualified engineers that can give through a peace of mind about whether there's significant risk in the unventilated areas? Is it unreasonable to do this? And the only thing I could say the reason to not do it is we would be concerned about what the answer would be. And this is one of those things where I really hope that we're transparent and that we search, have significant exposure in that is not being mitigated, because you can wash your hands, you can do all the things we're doing in the plan, but I think from this expert that we should just walk away from this one.
I don't think it's unreasonable to try and mitigate that. I think it should also be reasonable that we have multiple mitigation techniques like Dr. Hux had proposed, whether, mask, social distancing, the electrostatic sprayers that'll be used. It's not just the ventilation is not just one thing, because I think one might say that, okay, we have a plan to put these PCOs in all of our air conditioning units, but are they going to be ready? Is that going to be done by August the 26th? And my response to that, district-wide, probably not. So one would think, well, then we may have risk in a classroom that does have HVAC ventilation. You see what I'm saying?
Not really.
Well, I'm trying to say we're not going to have the PCOs in all the ventilated areas once school starts. So that's going to take time to get all that done. But I don't think it's unreasonable to try and find, if we can find an expert, to try and mitigate that risk for us between now and the 26th of August. But I still think we should proceed ahead with the plan to see what kids are willing to come back so we can begin to staff for it. And like Mr. Moore said, this plan, it's coming out tomorrow. It may be changing before the week's done. So I think we can do on this part, try and find someone who can give us that opinion, that expert opinion.
Mr. President, I have a question in reference to us voting on this. If it's the possibility is very likely that there will be changes probably tomorrow or the next day or whenever, why are we voting on this? You said just to give an okay for them to go forward. Can't we verbally just say go forward with whatever other changes need to take place rather than voting? For me, to say to vote on something means that it is an approved action that you want to do. So are we saying that about this plan, that the content of this plan is an approved action that we want to go forward on?
Yes, because they want to distribute this to patrons as soon as possible.
And it is a draft, so we know it's going to be changing, right? I mean, like you said, it will likely change tomorrow. Am I on mute?
No.
No. Okay.
Maybe the motion should read, I move that the Board of Education approve the draft reopening plan. Because tomorrow there'll be, as Travis said, a new plan.
I agree with that, because way it's worded now, it said I move that the Board of Education approve the reopening plan as presented. So that's not a truth that we're approving there, because it is not. If it's going to change, I don't see why we should say as presented, because it's subject
But
to
it
change.
is presented as a draft. I mean,
Well,
it says
should.
draft.
I think what we're saying, Amy, it should be changed in to say the
Okay.
word draft.
Yes, I think I'm fine with that. If the original,
That's okay.
who
Yeah.
made the original motion is open for friendly amendment to just say draft. I don't know, Rachel, who made the motion?
I made the motion. What do I need to say again?
Are you just open to saying draft plan?
Yes.
All right.
I think it's important we get this out now. Parents
Yes.
need to know. As a parent, I need to know, and I need to be able to answer questions when they
Right.
come to me. And even to be able to tell them it's going to change, but this is what we have in place, and we're asking you to make decisions based on the information we have. And I mean, I'm in that same position. I'm having to make a decision for, my high schooler, and And I'm right there with the other parents that are concerned. And yeah.
I am in agreement with the statements being made. I'm not, my kids have all graduated, but I'm still a grandparent and I still have grandkids that are in school. So I'm in total agreement. I think that all of us have some alarm and all of us have great concerns, and we're going places that we've never gone before as a district. So I'm definitely in agreement for us having some form of plan. I just wanted the wording to reflect that it is a draft.
And because we are asking parents to make some decisions by July 27th, or starting on July 27th. So, well, we didn't think Travis could beat his record of talking, but he certainly did that tonight. And now it's time to go through the 178-page plan.
Yeah, let me open that up for you and we'll go through it.
No.
I'm out.
Anyone have any final questions or comments for Dr. Hux or Dr. Markley?
Did we vote on the motion?
No, I'm asking for final questions before we vote.
Well, I guess back with Dr. Markley, you would be unwilling to get proposals from reputable engineers to study this issue.
No, I did not say that. I said that's something we can do if we can find someone to get that done between now and the beginning of school.
Mr. Tody, I am soliciting Hollis Miller, our managing architects, for a proposal to see what that would look like. As I mentioned to you in emails earlier, that I would do that. I don't have that yet, but as soon as I get that, I'll communicate that to Dr. Markley.
Well, I mean, I was looking. I mean, this is kind of like an audit here, and we pay the architects a lot of money. I'd feel better if it was somebody which the relationship was a little bit more distant than the people who are we're really close to. I think that would be an independent party would be more preferable. Could you be able?
And it may very well be a third party. I'm asking them to draft out a proposal, often because they are experts in drafting that type of language. I'm not an expert at HVAP person.
I got it. That makes sense. Okay, I'm in agreement with that.
All right. There's no other further questions or comments. All in favor of the motion to approve the draft plan, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Dr. Hux.
That program really came a long ways from that 3-page outline you had back in May.
Yeah, it's still growing.
Thanks, Dr. Hux.
All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I move that the board adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting at 9:38 p.m.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you again for everyone who stayed with us and paid attention and are part of this discussion this evening. So again, we hope to get all those questions answered at a later time that have been coming up here. So don't think you're being ignored. So all in favor of adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good adjourn this evening.
Good night, all.